Chapter 2258. Is he crazy? He's going to kill. Someone exclaimed. Duan Longwookwan was going to kill. In many people's eyes, he was already crazy. No matter what, they were here to help. Was Duan Longwookwan going to kill them all in one fell swoop? This move is so strong. I'm afraid even a real deity can't withstand such a move. Although Duan Longwookwan is arrogant and despotic, he is indeed qualified. With such strength, he can be ranked among the best among the demigods. What a powerful punch. Duan Longwookwan is not famous for his fist techniques. Duan Longwookwan must have had some other fortuitous encounter to have such an amazing fist technique cultivation. Look at Duan Longwookwan's chi. It's so thick that it's hard to imagine. He's younger than me by a few hundred years, but his skill is better than many old monsters. Duan Longwookwan really has a lot of resources. They've spared no effort to cultivate such a genius. Everyone quickly took turns to talk, but at the same time, they all retreated, not wanting to be involved. They also knew that Duan Longwookwan was here to find trouble with Yi Shiwen. Although it was to humiliate them, they did not want to get involved so easily. In terms of fist techniques, you're still far from it. Look at my divine fist of salvation. Suddenly, Yi Shiwen went against the flow of this endless turbulence. He took a step forward, clenched his 5 fingers into a fist, and released the power of redemption from his whole body. Countless power of redemption covered his body, making him look like a tyrannical lord of redemption. Boom! His punch was like a star, piercing through the heavens and the earth, shooting straight into the sky and blasting into the boundless turbulence. Broken Dragon Wuqiwan's punch exploded on the spot. Bang! Duan Longwookwan's punch was forced clean on the spot, and then the 2 fists directly collided in the air. Crack! Only a crisp sound of bones breaking could be heard. Duan Longwookwan's entire arm was hit, and blood splattered everywhere. His muscles exploded, and golden blood splashed out. Just one punch from Yi Shiwen, and he was seriously injured. Yi Shiwen did not show mercy. He went further and blasted another punch, hitting Duan Longwookwan's chest, directly blasting a huge bloody hole. Ah! Duan Longwookwan was sent flying, screaming miserably as he clutched his chest and slammed heavily into the ground. Who do you think you are? You're just a piece of trash that can't even withstand a single blow. I don't want to cause trouble, but if you want to provoke me, feel free to try. Although Yi Shiwen's words were directed at Duan Longwookwan, his eyes swept over the remaining disciples of the Duan Long clan. Duan Longwookwan had already been defeated, so he didn't put him in his eyes. He had already become a cripple. The remaining disciples of the Duanlong clan suddenly became furious. This was a blatant warning from Yi Shiwen. Moreover, it was from those so-called foreign geniuses whom they had always looked down upon. However, they weren't fools. They didn't rush forward because they knew very well what it meant. Broken Dragon Powerless wasn't weak, but he couldn't even block a single punch. This life-stealing scholar before them was strong. Very, very strong. His strength had far exceeded their expectations. What kind of fist technique was that just now? How could it be so tyrannical? At that moment, I felt that my whole body was filled with sin and I needed redemption. What a powerful fist technique. I originally thought that even if he was strong, it would be difficult to compare with the elite disciples of the Duanlong clan. Now, it seems that those elite disciples are nothing compared to him. That's right. What elite disciples of the Duanlong clan? I think they're just SOSO. Many people were shouting as if they wanted the world to be in chaos. They couldn't take revenge after being humiliated by the disciples of the Duanlong clan. Now that they saw them being humiliated, they were naturally in a good mood. However, they still couldn't believe their own eyes. Even if Duan Longwookwan was going to lose to Yi Shiwen, he wouldn't lose so easily. Embarrassing, too embarrassing. It seems that this life-stealing scholar is strong, more tyrannical than expected. But what kind of fist technique is he practicing? Why haven't I seen it before? It seems that this world is too vast. There's actually a fist technique that I don't know about. Not bad. That punch just now even made me feel threatened. This life-stealing scholar's fist technique is pretty good. It's powerful. Let's see if we can rope him in and get him to hand over that fist technique. Our Duanlong clan doesn't have any powerful fist techniques. This is also a big weakness. The experts on the thrones also started to discuss among themselves. That punch was an eye-opener for them. They could look down on the strength of those demigods, but they couldn't look down on the inheritance of those demigods. There were many demigod inheritances that were more powerful than they had imagined. Some of them were even the disciples of the legendary kings. Yi Xuan glanced at the experts of the Duanlong clan indifferently. The corner of his mouth twitched slightly. If they weren't in the territory of the Duanlong clan, he would have been able to kill these experts with just one punch. Duanlong Wookwen had almost reached the peak of the early stage of the Good Sage realm. However, it was still far from enough in front of Yi Xuan. Ha! I knew you could do it. Teach those guys a lesson. Ling Fei clenched her small fists. She opened her mouth wide and laughed without a care for her image. She put her hands on her hips and looked up to the sky as she laughed. She looked very arrogant. However, this arrogant action of hers looked very cute no matter how one looked at it. The remaining young experts of the Duanlong clan looked even more gloomy. Ling Fei's words were clearly adding fuel to the fire. They were burning with anger, but they couldn't do anything about it. Life-stealing scholar, don't be too proud. Don't think that this is the real strength of our Duanlong clan. One of the experts of the Duanlong clan roared. Of course, I don't think that the dignified Duanlong clan only has such rotten fish and shrimps. However, you guys are still far from being able to cause trouble for me. Yi Xuan took Ling Fei in his arms and walked out of the microcosm. Ling Fei's small face turned red. However, she surprisingly didn't cause trouble with Yi Xuan this time. Instead, she was as obedient as a kitten. The experts of the Duanlong clan gritted their teeth. Their eyes were almost spewing fire. They couldn't wait to swallow this arrogant guy in front of them. Of course, they would never think that Yi Xuan wouldn't have bothered with them if they hadn't gone to cause trouble for him. It didn't matter if they thought that Yi Xuan was arrogant or domineering. He didn't care at all. He was determined to get the quota for this selection. This was related to whether he could go one step further. It was the final sprint for the final Dao confirmation. Seeing that Yi Xuan had left, everyone left one after another. Even those geniuses of the Duanlong clan could only leave angrily. They didn't have the guts to cause trouble for Yi Xuan. After defeating Broken Dragon powerless in a single battle, the name of the life-stealing scholar had spread far and wide. Many people started to feel suspicious. Just who in the world was this life-stealing scholar? Why hadn't they heard of him before? However, they weren't too suspicious. The weapon Emperor Heaven was simply too big. Even they didn't know how many experts there were within it. Especially now that the Duanlong clan had issued a recruitment notice. It was very normal for a large number of experts to come. After defeating Duanlong Wuchuan in one move, the danger level of Yi Xuan in many people's hearts soared. In many people's eyes, he was almost the favorite for the final victory. Yi Xuan spent the night in closed-door cultivation. Now, he couldn't wait to seize every minute and every second to cultivate. He didn't even move. In the mansion prepared for him by the Duanlong clan, he didn't move at all. Yi Xuan. Early in the morning, Yi Xuan was pulled out of the state of cultivation by Ling Fei. What's wrong? Yi Xuan opened his eyes and looked at Ling Fei's excited face. Let me tell you, I went out early in the morning to inquire about the experts that the Duanlong clan might send this time. Ling Fei looked like she wanted to take credit for it. Oh, Yi Xuan replied with a no. Sure enough, Ling Fei's bright red little mouth pouted. She then said in a rather unhappy manner, Hey, I went out to inquire because of you. Don't you care? Yi Xuan smiled. Ling Fei was like a child who hadn't grown up yet in his eyes. She had cultivated to the peak of the demigod realm and still retained such a childish heart. It was a miracle in itself. However, this pure and innocent heart wasn't necessarily the most fundamental reason for rapid cultivation. What are you laughing at? Ling Fei looked at Yi Xuan with an unfriendly expression. Well, who are they? Yi Xuan asked with a smile. Ling Fei immediately threw her unhappiness to the back of her mind and said, Let me tell you, among the people of the Duanlong clan, Besides the trash Duanlong Wuchuan, there are two people worth paying attention to. After Duanlong Wuchuan was defeated by Yi Shiwen, Ling Fei's evaluation of him was that he was a useless trash. He couldn't even resist one move from Yi Shiwen. This made Yi Shiwen feel quite helpless. The power of his punch was terrifying. It could even destroy a galaxy. There was probably no one who could resist it. At least there shouldn't be such a person among the peak of the demigod realm. One of them is Duanlong Wuyu. This person is known as the strongest expert of this generation of the Duanlong clan. He is almost invincible. It is said that he had crossed the calamity not long ago. It can be said that he is the leader of the younger generation. Ling Fei said. Yi Shiwen nodded. It seemed that Ling Fei had put in the effort to collect information. It wasn't just for fun. The others are just SOSO. You can beat them casually. You don't need to care about them, Ling Fei said with a smile. Didn't you say that there is another one? Chapter 2259. The other one is the second son of the Duanlong clan, Duanlong Wu Ming. If you have a chance to meet him, help me beat him up. Ling Fei clenched her small fist and said with a frown. It seems that he has offended you, Yi Shiwen said with a chuckle. Yes, Ling Fei said seriously with a straight face. All right, then beat him up. Yi Shiwen laughed and got up to rush to the final selection venue. This time, the Duanlong clan would send 10 people to compete with the 10 people recruited from outside. Finally, 10 people would be selected. The 20 experts arrived very quickly and were naturally divided into two sides and two rows. The existence of 20 experts at the peak of the myth level, comparable to the masters of Tao confirmation level, solidified the space of the entire universe. In the face of such power, it was difficult for any space to withstand. The murderous intention was boundless. They were all competitors. Yi Shiwen stood in the crowd. Yesterday, he had severely injured Duanlong Wu Ming with a single punch, which instantly made him the focus of everyone's attention. Regardless of whether it was the Duanlong clan or the experts outside, they all had a considerable amount of attention on him. Wave after wave of pressure hit him in the face, unexpectedly wanting him to collapse his mind before the battle began. Yi Shiwen sneered, calm and composed. With the enlightening mind ancient tree, this kind of coercion was not a problem for him, and his gaze was on a slender and strong figure. His black hair was loose, and his whole body was full of golden treasure energy, like a pillar supporting the sky. It pierced through the sky, covering the sky and the earth, surging violently. Not to mention the experts from outside, even the people from the Duanlong clan were not willing to approach him. He was like a ferocious beast, completely above everyone else. The blood in his body was surging, as if there was a sonorous sound. Duanlong Wuyu. As his name suggested, his whole person looked abnormally cold. He seemed to have no desires, like a robot. In many people's rumors, among the 3 people, Duanlong Wuyu was going to be selected internally. This selection was not because he had used any connections or opened any back door. On the contrary, it was because his strength was too strong, so strong that people felt that it was reasonable for him to be selected internally. On the contrary, if he were to fight with others, it would be the biggest injustice to others. The entire place was silent. The 20 people from both sides were facing each other. It looked like they would start fighting at any moment. You're that fatal scholar? Finally, someone broke the silence. It was a handsome young man dressed in a magnificent robe. He held a folding fan in his hand. He finally withdrew his gaze from Ling Fei's body and looked towards Yi Shiwen. There was some doubt in his eyes. He clearly felt that the woman in front of him gave him a familiar feeling, as if he had seen her somewhere before. Otherwise, he wouldn't have stared at her for so long. He kept staring at Ling Fei until she became impatient. However, she couldn't speak. Yi Shiwen had forbidden her to speak in order to prevent her from giving herself away. Their appearance could be disguised, but their words and actions could be easily exposed. It didn't matter if he had never shown his face. However, Ling Fei had a criminal record, so she naturally had to be cautious. Who are you? Yi Shiwen crossed his arms and said without looking at the opposite party. The person he had transformed into now was a young genius who showed off his abilities. Naturally, his words and actions had to be overbearing and unyielding. That person suddenly felt as if he had punched into cotton. He had deliberately provoked Yi Shiwen, but Yi Shiwen didn't even know who he was. The key was to look at Yi Shiwen's eyes. He really didn't know who he was. This made him even more furious than deliberately ignoring him. He was simply ignorant of frog at the bottom of a well, and a summer insect couldn't talk about ice. Ling Fei almost couldn't help but laugh. She had already shown Yi Shiwen the portrait of this person in front of her. How could he not recognize him? This person was the second son of the Duanlong clan's current clan master, Duanlong Wu Ming. He was also the guy who had thoroughly provoked her. If she hadn't coincidentally met Yi Shiwen, she would have fallen into the hands of the Duanlong clan this time. He was pretending. She couldn't tell that this guy's acting skills were quite good. Everyone's eyes didn't look at Duanlong Wu Ming. Instead, they looked at Yi Shiwen as if they were looking at a rare treasure. Where did this guy come from? Forget about his origin. They had never even heard of Duanlong Wu Ming. They simply didn't know where this country bumpkin came from. The circle of the top Heaven's Pride experts was so small. Perhaps they didn't see eye to eye with everyone, but at least they knew each other. Where did this country bumpkin come from? What made them even more embarrassed was that they were actually inferior to this country bumpkin. I am Duanlong Wu Ming. Duanlong Wu Ming took a deep breath. Even if you haven't seen me before, you should at least have heard of my name. Duanlong Wu Ming. Oh, never heard of you, Yi Shiwen said lazily. Duanlong Wu Ming was so depressed that he almost spat out a mouthful of old blood. He still looked as if he had never heard of him. His eyes stared at Yi Shiwen, wishing he could tear him into pieces. He originally wanted to suppress this guy who had been in the limelight for the past 2 days, who knew that he would be humiliated instead. Don't bother with a country bumpkin. He could only keep repeating this sentence to calm his mood. Everyone looked at him and wanted to laugh. Duanlong Wu Ming was incomparably arrogant. Relying on his identity as the son of the Duanlong clan lord, he completely did not put others in his eyes. His target was only Duanlong Wu Yu. Suddenly, Duanlong Wu Ming appeared in front of everyone. He did not set off the slightest fluctuation. When he used space shift, the fluctuation was so small that it could be ignored. Everyone could not help but be secretly speechless. Duanlong Wu Ming's strength was still not something that they could compare with in a short period of time. In this selection, we only need 3 places. Therefore, a total of 3 arenas will be set up. Whoever thinks that they can be selected can naturally go up to the arena and defend. If they defeat all the opponents, they will be selected, Duanlong Wu Ming said indifferently. Everyone secretly thought for a moment. In this way, wouldn't the first one to go up be at a disadvantage? But thinking about it, if they did not have the strength to crush their opponents, what qualifications did they have to represent the Duanlong clan to fight against the Royal Weapon Pavilion? They might even die in the battle between the experts of the Royal Weapon Pavilion. I want a place, Duanlong Wu Yu said indifferently, but his words were extremely cold and piercing. No one present wanted to challenge Duanlong Wu Yu's authority. Compared to everyone else, he was obviously stronger by more than just a level. Of course, these people did not include Yi Shiwen. He immediately took a step forward and was about to speak. Duanlong Wu Yu was indeed a tough guy. Ordinary people would have their teeth broken if they tried to bite him, but Yi Shiwen was not on the list of ordinary people. Moreover, he wanted the final place. Among these people, Duanlong Wu Yu was undoubtedly the strongest. If he defeated the strongest, wouldn't he be the strongest? Naturally, such a place would fall into his hands, and it would also save him the trouble of fighting many times. Duanlong Wu Yu also recognized Yi Shiwen. His eyes narrowed, bursting with a frightening cold light. I want a second place. Deadly Scholar, do you dare to fight with me? Duanlong Wu Ming took a step forward and said. He looked at Yi Shiwen provocatively, and his eyes were filled with unconcealable anger. Yi Shiwen withdrew his steps, looked at Duanlong Wu Ming, and said indifferently, Get lost, don't be so shameless. What did you say? Duanlong Wu Ming was furious. He could no longer bear it, and a terrifying aura erupted, causing the sky to tremble. A powerful treasure aura flowed out from his pores and fell down, forming a canopy in the sky. His strength was indeed very powerful, incomparable. What he means is that you get lost. Don't be an eyesore. Ling Fei took a step forward and said aggressively. She had long been sick of this guy who had constantly pestered her. If there was a chance to disgust him, she would never let it go. Boom! A peerless, murderous aura surged out, and cracks appeared in the sky. Just the pressure released was enough to make everyone tremble. If they were to really fight, it would be an extremely terrifying scene. Yi Shiwen took a step forward and easily dissolved this peerless, murderous aura. Then, he looked at Duanlong Wu Ming indifferently and said, "She's right. Get lost. Don't be an eyesore. How dare you show off in front of me?" Duanlong Wu Ming was so angry that his whole body was trembling. He had been ignored again and again. How could he, a self-proclaimed genius, accept this? Good. I only ask you one thing. Do you dare to accept my challenge? Duanlong Wu Ming said anxiously. Yi Shiwen, go. Teach him a lesson. You promised me that you would teach him a good lesson. Ling Fei said secretly. Why wouldn't I dare? Yi Shiwen patted Ling Fei's little head, and a sweet fragrance assailed his nostrils. Her hair, his shoulder. Good. Since you have the guts, then I will make sure that you will never be able to rise again. Duanlong Wu Ming flew straight into the arena. Everyone's eyes turned to the two. Know yourself, know your enemy, and you will never be defeated. There was a reason why many people did not want to make a move at the beginning. Apart from a peerless master like Duanlong Wu Yu, who could guarantee that they would not lose. Yi Shiwen also flew straight up, not showing any weakness. He had not yet stabilized himself, and Duanlong Wu Ming's attack had already arrived. He crushed the sky with one foot, and a big hand rose up to the sky, slapping down towards Yi Shiwen. Fast! Duanlong Wu Ming's attack was fast to the extreme. Heaven and earth trembled, and the divine radiance split into countless rays. The murderous aura was monstrous, sweeping in all directions. Yi Shiwen raised his hand to block, and seemed to be very casual. Clang! There was a fierce collision. That big hand directly slapped on Yi Shiwen's arm, but it did not produce the result of shattering as expected. Instead, it was like two pieces of metal directly colliding. Everyone was shocked, and their eyes widened. Such an attack was actually easily blocked by him. Chapter 2260. Whoosh! Adai! Yi Shiwen did not back down. Golden divinities surged out of his body like thunder, surging crazily and deafeningly. Before Yi Shiwen's voice faded, he had already appeared in front of nameless broken dragon. Impossible! How can he be so strong? How can there be someone so strong among the demigods? However, he was not worried. He had absolute confidence in himself. In front of him, the Abyssal Demon Master and the Divine Union Leader were too inexperienced. They were not on the same level at all. No one could defeat you in the past, but that was in the past. Now your opponent is me. I will also break your undefeatable legend, Yi Shiwen said faintly. However, deep down, he did not really look up to this arrogant fool. If he did not rely on his identity as the son of the family leader, how could he have cultivated to his current level? Nameless Broken Dragon jumped away, only to feel the fist sweeping past the tip of his nose. He couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. If he hadn't decisively released his domain just now, perhaps even his head would have been blown up by Yi Shiwen's punch. Nameless Broken Dragon was chased by Yi Shiwen like a stray dog. Everyone began to mourn for him. If he had not provoked Yi Shiwen, he might have been able to obtain a position with his strength and identity. Now he had lost all his face. Bang! You have some skills. Yi Shiwen withdrew his fist and did not take advantage of the situation to chase after him. He grinned, revealing his big white teeth. Although I don't like to cause trouble, I also hate it when people find trouble with me. This time, Duanlong Wu Yu was the only one who was qualified to compete with Feng Qingxi. But this Yi Shiwen actually intended to look for trouble with Duanlong Wu Yu. They didn't know whether it was because he was extremely daring or because he was too daring. Bang! Anyone else? Nameless Broken Dragon glanced at the crowd and said. At this time, Yi Shiwen appeared in front of him. He gently lowered his body and avoided this fatal blow. Then he blasted out a punch. Immediately, the crowd was in an uproar. Everyone knew how difficult it was to deal with Broken Dragon Wuyu. He was completely above everyone else and had already proven his Tao. Just based on this point, his strength had already surpassed everyone's imagination. The nameless Broken Dragon was not an ordinary person. He immediately unleashed a formidable domain. Yi Shiwen felt as if his fist had entered a muddy algae. His speed was reduced by more than a notch. Wherever there's trouble, that's where you go. His gaze sharpened, and in the next second, his fist appeared in front of nameless Broken Dragon. No one? In this case, no one will be able to disturb our battle again. If I'm not mistaken, the target you were looking for should be me. Broken Dragon Wuyu shot a glance at Yi Shiwen. Everyone couldn't help but suck in a mouthful of cold air. One move, just one move, to heavily injure Broken Dragon Wuyu. Amongst them, only Broken Dragon Wuyu could achieve such strength. This round, the life-stealing scholar wins. Broken Dragon Wushang expressionlessly announced the result, as if the people who were sent flying were not his clansmen. Strong, very strong. Bang! Everyone was aghast, marveling at Yi Shiwen's amazing strength. Broken Dragon Wuming's strength was divine, but he was like a boulder, not moving an inch. One should know that the Broken Dragon clan's movement technique was also well known, but in front of Yi Shiwen, it seemed too slow. A loud clanging sound was heard, bursting with sparks. It was an intense collision. Everyone shook their heads. What a joke. Didn't they see that Broken Dragon Wuming could not even withstand one move? He was completely defeated by Yi Shiwen in one move. Even those who had reached the Tao realm would not be able to make him feel so terrified. Broken Dragon Wuyu's expression was cold, seemingly unaffected by Yi Shiwen's words. However, he did have such confidence. When he was still a demigod, he was able to counterattack an existence who had proven his Tao. Now that he had proven his Tao, who did he need to be afraid of? The crowd suddenly burst into an uproar. That was true, but against Broken Dragon Wuming who had proven his Tao, they had no chance of winning. I usually like to strangle trouble in the cradle. Just now, Broken Dragon Wuyu had made the right choice not to fight with him. If he had really chosen, then there was only one result left, and that was that he would not be able to withstand one move. Broken Dragon Wuyu, holding a battle spear, stood in the void, like the reincarnation of a god of war, extremely powerful. That's just right. Broken Dragon Wuyu's face was expressionless. A battle spear appeared in his hand. It was a blood-red spear made entirely of black gold. Its surface was stained with some golden blood. It should have drunk the blood of the gods. At this time, it had not dried up yet. It was unknown what kind of terrifying power it exuded. Too fast, his head was smashed by Yi Shiwen, and his body flew out, like a meteor flying out fiercely. The cold killing intent was incomparably piercing. Yi Shiwen blasted out a punch, and the entire starry sky exploded, collapsing. That's right, I hate trouble the most. If I can make it simple, then I'll make it simple. I heard that you're the strongest, so if I defeat you, I won't have to compete with anyone else. Yi Shiwen said lightly. You're very strong, but unfortunately, although you're comparable to a Tao validation, you're just an ordinary Tao validation. Among the demigods, it's impossible, not in the past, not in the future, to defeat me. Broken Dragon Wuyu said coldly. He had unimaginable confidence in his own strength. Finally, Broken Dragon Wuyu, who had been forced into a corner by Yi Shiwen, had gone completely crazy. With one foot on the ground, an astonishing rebound force burst out, and one hand slapped towards Yi Shiwen. His whole body flashed with a red light, like a peerless beast flying in the sky, and fiercely slammed down in Yi Shiwen's direction. This Yi Shiwen's first target was actually Broken Dragon Wuyu, so people could not help but sigh. A metal battle armor appeared all over his body, completely wrapping him up. Having seen Yi Shiwen's combat strength, he did not dare to underestimate him. At this moment, in their hearts, Yi Shiwen's threat had risen to the same level as Broken Dragon Wuyu. Yi Shiwen's direct counterattack, his fist transcending space, raised a terrible storm and blew the hair of both sides flying rapidly. On his body, traces of martial arts emerged, like a waterfall, and looked to have an unimaginable brilliance. Poor Broken Dragon Wuyu. He could have clearly watched the two of them fight to the death, but now he was beaten to the point where he could not even get up. Yi Shiwen's eyebrows slightly wrinkled. This broken dragon Wuyu gave him a very dangerous feeling, which was tyrannical for no reason at all. Everyone retreated into the distance. The battle just now was almost one-sided by Yi Shiwen. As long as Yi Shiwen did not use his full strength, there was nothing to worry about. But now, the two great masters had used their full strength, so naturally, everything was completely different. This idiot, he was just played like a mouse. He's lost the face of my Broken Dragon clan. Broken Dragon Wuyu said coldly, a bit of disdain flashing in his eyes. The real Yuan on Yi Shiwen's body burst out, and around him, the sky collapsed, the dark universe rotated, and everything was ruined. How could they go up and humiliate themselves at this time? Yes, in their hearts, this was practically asking to be humiliated. I don't believe it. What kind of fortuitous encounter did he have? Impossible. Is he born with an extraordinary physique? Otherwise, how could he be so tyrannical? So, he slowly dragged the battle spear in his hand. Immediately, many of the geniuses felt a kind of ice-cold, killing intent and chill emanating from their bones. This came from the battle spear itself. It was definitely not from Broken Dragon Wuyu. No one knew where he got it from, but it was actually so terrifying. In the end, he could only spit out such a sentence. Unknowingly, his back was completely drenched in cold sweat. If he had not seen it with his own eyes, he would not have dared to imagine that other than that freak Broken Dragon Wuyu, there was actually someone who could give him such a sense of oppression. This deadly scholar, what kind of movement technique does he have? How can he be so strong? Broken Dragon Wuyu was far from the only one who had such doubts. Everyone else was also completely shocked. Just the movement technique that Yi Shiwen had displayed was already enough to put him among them. So fast. Boom. Boom. His strength was far more tyrannical than what everyone had imagined. Many people found it hard to believe. In the distance, Broken Dragon Wuyu struggled for a while, trying to get up, but to no avail. He was completely knocked out by Yi Shiwen. Boom! Broken Dragon Wuyu's whole body stiffened. How could he be so fast? What kind of movement technique was that? Bang! Broken Dragon Wuyu is simply stronger than I initially expected. I thought that compared to Broken Dragon Wuyu, the gap between me and him was not that big. Now, it seems that this is really a ridiculous joke. Now there was another one, and the gap between the strength of both sides was really too big. They had never seen such a movement technique before. Even when he was traversing through space, there was not the slightest ripple. One could imagine how fast he was. At this time, Broken Dragon Wuyu was just constantly dodging Yi Shiwen's attacks mechanically. He no longer dared to stop, because once he stopped, he would be hit by Yi Shiwen. Although he had not been hit by Yi Shiwen before, he could see the layers of space that had been blasted by Yi Shiwen at a glance. He did not dare to take this risk at all because it was almost like courting death. He suddenly stomped a big hole under his feet, and at the critical moment, his whole body flew thousands of meters away like a cannonball, barely dodging Yi Shiwen's punch. Chapter 2261. Go ahead and try. Broken Dragon Wuyu's eyes were cold, bursting with unimaginable light. At the same time, a powerful aura burst out like an ocean and covered Yi Shiwen. However, Yi Shiwen didn't care about it at all. He took a step forward and blocked this ocean-like coercion. Two peerless, murderous intents collided. Cracks appeared in the sky. Neither side gave way. You should be glad that your realm is higher than mine. Otherwise, I can defeat you in one move, just like how I defeated Broken Dragon Wuming. Yi Shiwen glanced at Broken Dragon Wuming, who was struggling in the distance. He stared at Yi Shiwen with a gloomy and cold gaze. He was filled with hatred towards Yi Shiwen. Unfortunately, Broken Dragon Wuyu's next words made him have the urge to spit out a mouthful of blood. Don't compare me with that trash. Even if we are in the same realm, I have never beaten anyone. Broken Dragon Wuyu said coldly. He had an air of superiority, looking down on all the people in the world. What's more, it's hard to say whether you can reach Tao validation. You are still far from being able to compare with me. Everyone nodded. Even they themselves were very clear that having strength comparable to Tao validation did not mean that they could enter Tao validation in the future. On the contrary, because of this, if they attracted divine tribulations in the future, they would be many times stronger than ordinary people. If you are really so powerful, your Broken Dragon clan would not need to invite so many heroes in the world. Yi Shiwen retorted. Broken Dragon Wuyu looked at Yi Shiwen indifferently. I also think that there is no need for this. I am enough. If even I can't stop Feng Qingji, then no one in this area can have such strength. How arrogant. I want to see if you have such ability. Yi Shiwen stepped forward and said indifferently. Kill. I will show you now. Broken Dragon Wuyu roared. His aura swallowed the mountains and rivers, and his body moved like the stars. He attacked without hesitation, not giving Yi Shiwen the slightest time to think. Yi Shiwen wasn't to be outdone either. Golden divinities pervaded out of his entire body, and instantly swept across the sky like a mass of golden mist. The broken sky sword appeared in Yi Shiwen's hand. He wouldn't be careless in the face of such an opponent. Compared to Broken Dragon Nameless, Broken Dragon Wuyu was much stronger. Dragon Breaker Wuyu's battle spear had fused with his entire body. It even split the sky apart as he attacked with all his might. The spear fiercely slashed down. Around this spear, cracks appeared one after another in the sky. At this time, the space-breaking sword in Yi Shiwen's hand had also displayed the king's tyrannical descent and collided with each other. Boom! This area of space exploded, and a shocking explosion occurred. Everyone turned pale with fright. The standard of the battle between both parties had completely surpassed the strength of an ordinary early eminent saint stage powerhouse. Both parties stood steadily in the sky without taking even half a step back. However, the space under their feet had already collapsed like a landslide. It was extremely terrifying. Broken Dragon Wuyu's pupils contracted slightly. This was unprecedented. He was wearing a battle suit, and he could almost borrow the power of an ancient great god. It could be said that he had infinite strength. Moreover, with the protection of the battle suit, he didn't have to worry about what kind of attack could hurt him. However, Yi Shiwen alone was enough to make him inexplicably shocked. He was wearing a battle suit, and he had borrowed a lot of power from the battle suit. However, Yi Shiwen was almost empty-handed. How could he be so powerful? Not bad. Again, Broken Dragon Wuyu raised the battle spear in his hand again. It directly pierced through the sky and slashed down towards Yi Shiwen. The terrifying astral wind blew, and his hair fluttered continuously. His eyes were extremely calm, and there wasn't the slightest hint of panic in them. The long sword in his hand burst out an incomparably shocking divine light. Deadly Scholar, didn't you say that I'm no match for you in the same realm? Even if we're in the same realm, I'll still kill you. Broken Dragon Wuyu said coldly and domineeringly. As the #1 genius of the Broken Dragon clan, he had such confidence, and he also had such confidence. Cut the crap. Wait for me to defeat you. Then we'll talk slowly. Yi Shiwen took a step forward, and a big hole appeared in the void under his feet. The sky-breaking sword in his hand displayed the Emperor's arrival. At this moment, along with the sword chi that shot out, he had already incarnated into an incomparably powerful emperor, controlling everything between heaven and earth. Broken Dragon Wuyu's murderous aura was even more overwhelming. The terrifying real elemental energy had completely transformed into magical power. This was a terrifying energy that was one level higher than real elemental energy. Since ancient times, there was a saying that magical power was omnipotent and magical power was boundless. And this boundless magical power referred to the energy of this magical power. The energy of Broken Dragon Wuyu instantly became several levels stronger than before. This was the crushing of a realm above a realm below. Clanks! With a loud roar, the tip of the long sword and the battle spear collided directly. Both of them erupted with amazing combat power, and their fighting intent penetrated the entire universe. Everyone could not help but feel a chill down their spine. If such a battle were to take place outside, there was no doubt that it would be a terrible disaster. Once such a level of combat power was fully unleashed, and the battle could not be ended as soon as possible, it would be a real disaster. This was a battle of all-out effort. A string of golden blood splashed out from Yi Shiwen's mouth. His eyes actually dimmed a little. Everyone trembled. This was the first time Yi Shiwen had been injured since he appeared in front of everyone. Could it be that even this dark horse that everyone was optimistic about was not a match for Broken Dragon Wu Yu? Sure enough, they could only challenge ordinary Dao confirmation masters at most. One must know that before Broken Dragon Wu Yu reached Dao confirmation, he was comparable to the top existence of Dao confirmation. Not to mention, after he reached Dao confirmation, he almost immediately surpassed everyone. Everyone could not help but feel a little sad. Those who had not reached Dao confirmation were completely at a disadvantage. They did not know if they would be able to reach Dao confirmation in the future. On the other side, Broken Dragon Wu Yu's body was bathed in divine radiance, and his appearance could not be seen clearly. He looked like a living god. This is really a little interesting. Is this spiritual power? It's really amazing. Yi Shiwen smiled faintly and wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. The power of spiritual power was much more powerful than he had initially imagined. It could almost be said that it had completely exceeded his initial expectations. So far, the three gods he had fought, whether it was the Abyssal Demon Master or the Divine Union Leader, had just reached Dao confirmation, and the qi in their bodies had not yet been completely transformed into spiritual power. Therefore, he had not sensed it. The Broken Dragon family's great commander did not have enough time. From the beginning to the end, he had been suppressed and had no time to release it. Is there really no way to defeat him as a demigod? Many people were a little desperate. They were confident that they would not lose to anyone, but at this moment, they were a little desperate. Even Yi Shiwen was like this, let alone them. Bang! A slight cracking sound came from within the endless divine radiance, and a string of blood spurted out. It was splattered from Broken Dragon Wu Yu's body. This is divine blood. Could it be that Broken Dragon Wu Yu is also injured? Everyone was shocked. They could not believe it. Yi Shiwen was injured. No matter how strong he was only a demigod, and Broken Dragon Wu Yu was a genuine god. How could he also be injured? In the midst of a tit-for-tat battle between the two of them, Broken Dragon Wu Yu had actually been injured. Everyone looked over. Indeed, Broken Dragon Wu Yu's chest was dripping with blood. The blood was constantly dripping down. The blood that dripped down was actually repairing his armor. Using God's blood to repair the god armor, Broken Dragon Wu Yu was indeed amazing. Even if he had just been injured, how many people would dare to underestimate him? Speaking of this, everyone thought of an even more terrifying fact. Broken Dragon Wu Yu had relied on his superior realm to crush Yi Shiwen's qi with his spiritual power, but the result was that both sides had been defeated. Was such an outcome not enough to shock everyone? Although I don't want to use my realm to crush you, there is no other way. I don't want this battle to drag on. Broken Dragon Wu Yu said faintly. The wounds on his body had quickly recovered, and soon there was no difference from the beginning. Everyone was shocked. Had Yi Shiwen become so strong that he could not even suppress Broken Dragon Wu Yu without using his full strength? Opposite him, Yi Shiwen's recovery speed was also amazing. Although he did not have a divine body, Gilded Tyrant form combined with Phoenix regeneration technique, his recovery speed was even better than Broken Dragon Wu Yu's. As I said, killing you in the same realm is easy. Even if we are not in the same realm, it is not difficult to kill you. Yi Shiwen did not give in at all. Broken Dragon Wu Yu sneered. He rushed towards Yi Shiwen with a bloody spear in his hand, and a stone tablet appeared in his other hand. Broken Dragon Breaking Steel Hand. This was the supreme lost technique of the Broken Dragon family. It was the supreme, god-level lost technique that was comprehended on the Broken Dragon Stone. It pressed down on Yi Shiwen on the spot. Although the Broken Dragon Stone was fake, The two words Broken Dragon were really shining, as if a powerful master was chanting scriptures, moving the Broken Dragon stone, and suppressing his powerful opponent. Yishuan still did not have the slightest fear. He did not give in at all. He directly blasted out the divine fist of redemption and transformed into the Lord of Redemption. A punch blasted out, completely contending with the Broken Dragon breaking steel hand. Boom! There was a huge roar. The divine fist of redemption and the Broken Dragon breaking steel hand collided directly. The splashing divine light was as dazzling as the explosion of the galaxy, making the entire universe lose all other colors in an instant. At this time and place, everyone's attention was only left here. Schwa! However, such an offensive was just a feint. The real killer move, accompanied by the bloody spear, arrived in front of Yishuan, covering the sky and covering the earth. Chapter 2262. His battle clothes had also been torn apart by Yishuan's attack. There were countless wounds on his body, and blood was gushing out like a column. However, he didn't care about it at this time. He had been forced into a disadvantageous position by Yishuan. This was the first time for him. Even with his pride, he had never encountered such a difficult opponent. Broken Dragon Wuyu roared like a beast. His eyes were full of fierce light. He held the blood-red spear in both hands and rushed towards Yishuan. This is the end. I will defeat you now. I don't want to continue playing. Bang! This sword directly slashed on the iron armor on his body. A burst of sparks flew, and then blood splashed out on the spot. The iron armor on his body, which was unknown how strong, directly had a crack, and blood splashed out. The sword pierced through the air like a star exploding. The sword flower turned into a universe of stars and instantly slashed down. He didn't know when it had started, but just blocking Yishuan's attack was already something to be happy about. There was a loud roar. The atoms were annihilated, and a huge mushroom cloud rose up, completely swallowing everything. No one could see clearly. He did not dare to imagine what kind of body could be so tyrannical. No wonder Yishuan could not be at a disadvantage when he was already wearing the battle armor. Broken Dragon Wuyu no longer cared about his injuries. He directly drew the Broken Dragon Stone and collided with Yishuan's sky-flipping seal. Initially, Broken Dragon Wuyu could still rely on his battle armor, which was also incomparably sturdy, to attack Yishuan. He could even injure Yishuan. However, slowly, as his battle armor continued to be damaged, the gap between him and Yishuan was also slowly widening. Slowly, he suffered more and more injuries, and gradually, he was no longer a match for Yishuan. Yishuan just stepped on the ground and operated the observing person scripture. The surroundings turned into a universe, and in this universe, the sun, moon, and stars rotated around him. He was like the only true god in this universe. Nothing could stop his footsteps, and nothing could shake his position. Bang! Oomph! Broken Dragon Wuyu wasn't the least bit afraid. At this moment, a battle god suddenly stood up from the blood-colored battle spear in his hand. Blood-colored light burst forth from the spear. Blood-colored energy burst forth, blocking the peerless demon. Broken Dragon Wuyu couldn't withstand this kind of power and was sent flying. He punched out, and this punch pierced through the entire universe like a meteor streaking across the sky. Everywhere he passed, the stars were completely shattered, and even the sky was shattered. Yishuan had already gained the upper hand. He was suppressing Dragon Wuyu in an orderly manner, and all kinds of martial arts had erupted with astonishing might in his hands. Boom! In this sword strike, he had transformed into a true emperor, the Emperor Domineering Descent. Although Broken Dragon Wuyu was powerful, he was not powerful enough to make him feel hopeless. Now that he had tested it, Broken Dragon Wuyu's ability was almost at the middle of a mortal level. He was just a step away from breaking through. The power of his entire body was raised to an absolute height. Suddenly, a figure fell out from it. Everyone took a closer look, and that person was none other than Broken Dragon Wuyu. At this moment, Broken Dragon Wuyu's body was bleeding profusely, and he was no longer as powerful as before. He was in a sorry state extremely sorry. Both the demon and the blood-colored war god's bodies ruptured at the same time, and golden blood sprayed out. Neither of them were artifact spirits, but they were formed from the will of the two divine artifacts. They were far from being real artifact spirits, but in reality, they were not much stronger than artifact spirits. However, Yi Shiwen did not dodge at all. A touch of demonic energy directly flew up from his body and instantly wrapped him in it. It was the demon's summoning banner. Almost instantly, the demon's summoning banner surged with an endless amount of demon chi, turning into a matchless demon head. It pounced in the direction of broken dragon Wuyu, opened its bloody mouth, and swallowed everything it could see in its mouth. It was a bloody battle between the two of them. Such an attack made everyone feel a chill down their spines. The strength of these two people was clearly above them. They were only at the demigod realm, but they were already strong enough to kill powerful experts at the doctrine realm. What made his self-esteem even more unacceptable was that this person was only in the demigod realm, which was an entire realm lower than his. "What kind of defense weapon is your body?" he said in horror. To put it bluntly, he did not believe in the Broken Dragon family at all. He was seriously injured by a sword, and Broken Dragon Wuyu did not even have time to dodge. However, Broken Dragon Wuyu was also a ruthless person. In the face of such a situation, he simply did not dodge. He directly dragged the battle spear in his hand, pierced through the sky, and suddenly stabbed at Yi Shiwen. How is this possible, this body? Broken Dragon Wuyu was suddenly shocked. He didn't expect that he would only be able to stab 3 inches into Yi Shiwen's body. It was completely different from his original plan of stabbing Yi Shiwen's internal organs. Boom! He completely had the upper hand in terms of strength. He had not yet used his full strength, and he had not integrated the martial arts incarnation and the 5 Emperor's battle armor. Otherwise, his strength would be comparable to a master in the middle of the immortal level. Puff! Fast! However, this was not a problem at all for him. This was a brutal battle. The battle between the two god artifacts could be described as neither giving way to the other. It was extremely brutal. As the supreme skill that the Broken Dragon family relied on, the power of the Broken Dragon tablet-breaking hand was naturally self-explanatory. This was Yi Shiwen's real killer move. There was a fierce collision sound. It was a tragic battle. The two artifacts collided fiercely. Although the battle spear in Broken Dragon Wuyu's hand was powerful, there was no way to break through the defense of the demon's summoning flag. It was extremely fast, and it directly pierced into Yi Shiwen's body. Under the attack of hatred, even the defense of the demon's summoning flag was pierced, and it directly blasted into Yi Shiwen's body. Clang! However, fortunately, even if he did not use all his strength, he could completely suppress Broken Dragon Wuyu with his own strength, and he could slowly defeat him. However, it was too late. His reaction was not as fast as Yi Shiwen's. Even if he used his territory to slow down the speed of Yi Shiwen's sword, it still directly slashed his body. Clang! However, it was useless. In the face of Yi Shiwen's strength, all their attacks seemed to be too childish. Broken Dragon Wuyu's face changed slightly, and he frowned slightly. This was the first time he was so serious. Yi Shiwen's attack was too fast, and what was worse was that Yi Shiwen's attack did not give way at all. It could almost be said to be powerful and heavy. Such a scene was extremely terrifying, as if an emperor was destroying the world. Fast! He must have a backup plan. Otherwise, if something happened, he would be at a loss. Almost nothing could stop the attack of this sword. The clash between the demon and the blood-colored war god was like the collision of yin and yang. It was as if the world was going to be split apart. The world was going to be completely turned into powder by this attack. This was the terrifying power of a divine artifact. Under this full power attack, it was comparable to a god, or even more terrifying than a god. Clang! If he had a breakthrough, he might have to waste some time, but now he was absolutely no match for Yi Shiwen. The two killer moves almost came one after another in an instant. These two moves seemed to be a feint attack, and the other move was the real main attack direction. Fast! Yi Shiwen glanced at him. He didn't have to bear the attack just now. He could use Tianyuan Mirror to take it, but he still chose to take it head-on. Because he had already produced 2 divine tools, he was basically as eye-catching as Ling Fei. If he produced another one, it would be terrible. Moreover, the quality of Tianyuan mirror was far beyond ordinary. If there was someone who could recognize it, then perhaps he would have fled from the Broken Dragon clan. The battle between the two of them had already far exceeded the ordinary proving way. At this time, Broken Dragon Wuyu could no longer care about his initial promise. He had originally wanted to defeat Yi Shiwen in the same realm, but now it seemed that it was simply impossible. Even if his realm was higher than Yi Shiwen's, he did not dare to say that he was Yi Shiwen's opponent. In the dangerous environment of the Broken Dragon clan, he could not use his full strength. If something happened, he would not even have a trump card. Bang! Bang! But in fact, these 2 moves could be changed at any time. The killer move could also be a feint attack, and the Broken Dragon Tablet Breaking Hand could also become a real attack. Bang! At this time, Broken Dragon Wuyu had been forced to a dead end by Yi Shiwen. He was completely crazy. He produced the Broken Dragon Tablet Breaking Hand and collided with Yi Shiwen. Boom! Human Dao Fist. Roar! Yi Shiwen did not answer. He produced the Overturning Sky Seal in his hand and blasted it towards Broken Dragon Wuyu. This is just the beginning. Isn't it too early for you to be complacent? Yi Shiwen's voice appeared in front of Broken Dragon Wuyu, who had a somewhat complacent look on his face. There was a sound like gold and iron colliding. The battle spear pierced Yi Shiwen's body like gold and iron, but it still went in freely. However, it was not deep, only 3 inches. Both of them fought again. Their speed was as fast as lightning. The fierce collision caused the sky to explode, and the blazing light swept everything. In a short period of time, the 2 sides had already exchanged over 1,000 moves. Broken Dragon Wuyu had already gone crazy. Every time he attacked with his blood-red battle spear, it would bring about a bloody battlefield. Countless opponents who had been defeated by the blood-red battle spear, their screams would briefly revive and attack Yi Shiwen. Chapter 2263. What do you mean by tragic? To the crowd, this was already tragic enough. A god had been killed to such an extent. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they definitely wouldn't have believed it. Moreover, Broken Dragon Wuyu was not an ordinary Dao validation powerhouse. Even among the powerhouses who had just achieved Dao validation on beginner holy level, he was famous for being powerful. In just a short while, he had already reached the threshold of an intermediate immortal level powerhouse. His cultivation speed was extremely terrifying. He had never heard of a demigod being able to contend with him. Even someone as confident as Nameless Broken Dragon did not dare to say that he could handle Broken Dragon Wuyu when he was facing him. Everyone realized that Broken Dragon Wuyu's declaration that he would be fearless even if they were on the same level as him now seemed like a joke. However, no one dared to laugh at Broken Dragon Wuyu because it wasn't that he wasn't strong enough, but that the fatal stealing scholar in front of him was just too terrifying. He was simply a monster. They had never seen such a ferocious demigod before. Of course, they didn't know that Yi Shiwen hadn't used his trump card yet. He hadn't used his true strength yet. Otherwise, they would have been scared silly. Who would have thought that Wu Yu's Broken Dragon would have such a day? Many people secretly rejoiced in their hearts. Many people were still unhappy with Broken Dragon Wu Yu. They themselves were very clear that they were far inferior to Broken Dragon Wu Yu. They did not dare to challenge Broken Dragon Wu Yu. If it were not for the fact that there were 3 slots this time, if there was only one, they would not have come at all. Unless he had proven his Dao, there was no way he could compare to Broken Dragon Wu Yu. Could it be that he had come to seek humiliation? Moreover, the battle just now had completely demonstrated what it meant to be tyrannical. Wu Yu's Broken Dragon truly lived up to his reputation. His strength was so strong that it was terrifying. However, Yi Shiwen was just too strong. Roar! Broken Dragon Wu Yu went completely crazy. He let out a huge roar, and the sky cracked. Fortunately, they were in a small world. Otherwise, it would have caused great chaos. Behind him, there was a looming majestic figure with an unimaginably terrifying aura. He had integrated his martial arts incarnation into his body, and he was able to compete with an expert in the middle of a mortal level in one breath. Although he was just an expert at the bottom of the middle of a mortal level, it was already extremely terrifying. Broken Dragon Wu Yu opened his pair of ice-cold eyes, and a powerful phantom of the god of war appeared behind him. He didn't hesitate and directly rushed towards Yi Shiwen to kill him. Whoosh! Yi Shiwen's figure suddenly disappeared in front of him, and he fiercely pounced on empty air, completely unable to keep up with Yi Shiwen's speed. Why is it still? Did we see wrongly? Everyone suspected that their eyes were playing tricks on them. It was obvious that the broken dragon Wu Yu had burst forth with the strength of an immortal-level beginner, but the result was that Yi Shiwen had easily dodged it. In the next second, Yi Shiwen's figure appeared in the distance. You! Broken dragon Wu Yu's complexion turned ugly all of a sudden. Yi Shiwen's speed had suddenly increased by so much, but it wasn't because he had held back like him. So, there was only one possibility, and that was that he had held back just now. Thinking of this, his face became even uglier. You didn't do your best just now. Broken dragon Wu Yu gritted his teeth and suddenly shocked everyone. It was already hard to imagine that Yi Shiwen could suppress Broken Dragon Wu Yu, but what was even more terrifying was that he actually did not use his full strength. Damn! Nobody knew who said this, but they were completely dumbfounded and could not control their emotions at all. This was indeed a monster. Broken Dragon Wu Yu let out a low growl, like a beast that had been provoked. Some kind of emotion was rising, and around him, the vacuum exploded, becoming more and more terrifying. This was simply a slap in the face. Moreover, he did not even have the strength to fight back. There was dead silence, and everyone kept quiet out of fear. Broken Dragon Wu Yu was tall, and at this time, he was like a mountain. The aura that erupted from him was so oppressive that everyone could not breathe. There was a strange expression on everyone's face. Broken Dragon Wu Yu was cold and arrogant, and he did not seem to put anyone in his eyes among his peers. In the end, Yi Shiwen did not even use his full strength, and he was beaten to the point where he could not fight back. This was a kind of complete contempt. Broken Dragon Wu Yu wanted to fight Yi Shiwen and establish his supreme prestige. The battle between the two sides could be described as tragic, and it was okay for Broken Dragon Wu Yu to fall into a disadvantage. But what was even more unacceptable was that this was the result of Yi Shiwen not using his full strength. It was simply a slap in the face, a slap that resounded. Since his debut, no one had dared to look down on him like this. Broken Dragon Wu Yu must be furious now. Who asked him to be arrogant? Now he's got a slap in the face. Many people reacted, and there was a faint joy in their hearts. On the high throne, the Dao confirming experts of the Duanlong clan looked at each other, not knowing what to say. They were very clear about Broken Dragon Wu Yu's strength. In time to come, it was not impossible for him to be ranked amongst them, or even surpass them in the end. In this battle against the Imperial Weapon Pavilion, their final plan was to have Broken Dragon Wu Yu as the leader, and recruit 2 more people to form the situation of Tianji's horse race. Who would have thought that it would really attract a fierce dragon? It was completely a case of fierce dragons don't cross the river. Although it was said that a strong dragon could not suppress a local snake, but such a ridiculously strong dragon, even a local snake could not defeat it. What is the background of this deadly scholar? How is he so powerful? Could he be someone from other places? Why have we never heard of him? Not only that deadly scholar, there is also that charming Yiksha. Her strength is not weak, and logically speaking, it is impossible for 2 people who have never been heard of to suddenly jump out. These few years, there just happened to be an invasion from the outside. Could it be someone guessed and unexpectedly guessed the correct answer? Impossible. The aura on their bodies are pure native auras of the equipment Sovereign Heaven. Otherwise, the heavenly way is enough to crush them to death. Someone immediately refuted. The aura of these 2 people was very pure, and with their cultivation, they could not see any clues or flaws. And at this moment, while everyone was discussing, Broken Dragon Wu Yu finally straightened his body. His eyes contained the life and death of the universe, bringing an unimaginable pressure to the people. His face was as calm as water, and he walked towards Yi Shiwen step by step. His mood was unimaginably heavy. He was forced by Yi Shiwen to fuse with the martial arts incarnation, and originally planned to use it to deal with Feng Qingji. Now that he used it on Yi Shiwen, the result was that Yi Shiwen did not use his full strength at all. Boom! Broken Dragon Wu Yu made his move. One of his hands turned into the Broken Dragon Stone, crushing everything, and turned into a dazzling divine light that blasted towards Yi Shiwen, bursting out with dazzling light. The sky was trembling, and an unimaginably terrifying power was unimaginable. He roared. This attack was going to strike down the sun and the sky. Bang! His Broken Dragon Stone was blocked by Yi Shiwen's chi-condensed hand. Amazing divine light burst out, but it could not break free from Yi Shiwen's blockade. Deadly Scholar, do you dare to fight with all your strength? Broken Dragon Wu Yu roared at Yi Shiwen. This was even more humiliating than being defeated. Wait until you have the ability to do so, Yi Shiwen said slowly. He spread out his hands and evolved an amazing martial art. His body turned into a universe, and the sun, moon, and stars were constantly rotating with his movements. This was an amazing scene. Many people could not help but feel a chill when they saw it. Broken Dragon Soulless continued to attack Yi Shiwen, but all his attacks seemed too childish in front of Yi Shiwen. They couldn't shake Yi Shiwen's defense at all. Even the universe that Yi Shiwen had evolved could not break it. Even with just his own strength, Yi Shiwen was enough to suppress Broken Dragon Wu Yu. Everyone was shocked. Who could match such strength? If it were not for Broken Dragon Wu Yu, they might not even be qualified to see this scene. Broken Dragon Wu Yu became more and more shocked as the battle went on. He had never been so passive before. Even when facing Feng Qingji, he did not feel so passive. This kid was too amazing. The spiritual power in his body surged out. For a moment, the sky collapsed, and the starry sky completely collapsed. There were chaotic turbulence everywhere, and it looked extremely shocking. Watch carefully. Take my punch. Yi Shiwen blasted out the divine fist of redemption again, but this time, he did not deliberately suppress his strength. Instead, he punched directly. Bang! Broken Dragon Wu Yu was hit on the spot and flew out. He did not know how many thousands of miles he flew, and the iron clothes on his body were shattered in an instant. In the end, it was not a divine tool, but a pseudo-divine tool. Not everyone was like Yi Shiwen and Ling Fei, who were so rich with a few divine tools. Moreover, it was a defensive divine tool. Its value was comparable to the price of a few offensive divine tools. Fortunately, the iron clothes took all the attacks for him. Although the iron clothes were shattered, he himself was unharmed. However, before he could rejoice, Yi Shiwen had already rushed in front of him. Yi Shiwen's hair fluttered in the wind, and his eyes were cold. It was as if the universe was being born and destroyed. He was very calm. He transformed the overturning sky seal in his hand and smashed it down from the sky. Bang! Broken Dragon Wu Yu had no strength to resist. He was hit again and fell hard on the spot. The entire small world that was reinforced by the Matrix was almost smashed. His whole body was almost shattered. Broken Dragon Wu Yu struggled to get up, but this time, he was completely injured. How could he have the ability to stand up again? Yi Shiwen also stopped and did not continue to attack. This made the Dao-confirming experts of the Duan Long clan breathe a sigh of relief. After all, even if they were defeated, Duan Long Wu Yu was one of them, and Yi Shiwen was just an outsider. Naturally, they could not help Yi Shiwen. Chapter 2264. In their eyes, Yi Shiwen was naturally tyrannical. It could almost be said that more than 80% of the martial arts in the Weapon Emperor Heaven were more or less related to the Weapon Emperor himself. The other place was naturally reserved for Broken Dragon Wu Yu. Even if he was defeated by Yi Shiwen, no one could compete with Yi Shiwen for so long other than him. Yi Shiwen was recognized as tyrannical. It was a turbulent ocean. Huge waves of more than thousands of meters were surging at any time. What made Yi Shiwen's eyes widen was that these waves, and even the entire turbulent ocean, were transformed from a kind of energy. It was not real seawater. Yi Shiwen nodded with a smile, but he did not take it to heart. Soon, the loophole in the Weapon Emperor heaven would be filled. How could he continue to stay? He would have to wait for 100,000 years for the next time. Yi Shiwen roared, stepped out, and suddenly rushed into the broken dragon pond, like a dragon returning to the sea. A bold idea emerged in his mind. He wanted to use the energy in the broken dragon pond to completely refine the broken dragon stone. At least he needed to be able to control it. On the other hand, the Equipment Emperor Pavilion was said to have obtained most of the teachings left behind by the Equipment Emperor. However, besides themselves, no one knew whether it was true or not. After all, according to the legends of the Equipment Emperor heaven, the Equipment Emperor had left far, far away. What was a tyrant's fighting style? This was a downright tyrant's fighting style. It was bullying you with a divine tool. What could you do? He did not even have to worry about the lack of energy, because the broken dragon pond did not lack energy. It was completely absorbed by him and became the fundamental energy for him to refine the Celestial Emperor tool refining technique. This is the most fundamental broken dragon pond of our broken dragon clan. You're very lucky because under normal circumstances, our broken dragon pond is not open to the public. Even I have only come here once. This time, we opened it in order to resist the aggressiveness of the tool Emperor Pavilion. Broken Dragon Wushang looked at Yi Shiwen with some envy and said, Ling Fei did not hide it like Yi Shiwen. She had a completely bite me if you don't accept it look, compared to the soul-stirring battle between Yi Shiwen and Broken Dragon Wuyu. Ling Fei's victory made everyone completely helpless. If it wasn't for a few old fellows that had survived from the era of the Equipment Emperor, they would practically be unable to confirm if the Equipment Emperor really existed or what sort of existence he was. Yi Shiwen and Ling Fei went deep into the Duanlong clan under the guidance of Wushang of the Broken Dragon clan. They passed through layers of secret spaces and shuttled through subspaces. They would occasionally have divine tools in their hands. However, these divine tools were considered to be relatively wealthy. However, the quality of their divine tools couldn't be compared with Ling Fei's defensive divine tool. In fact, they weren't on the same level. A wave of scorching heat assaulted his face, making him feel as if his entire body was about to melt. However, this is just the beginning. As long as you perform well, if you can win against the Imperial Weapon Pavilion, you will all be included in our Duanlong clan's priority nurturing. Your future prospects will be limitless. Duanlong Wushang said. At this time, the broken dragon stone that was hidden in the Tianyuan mirror suddenly flew out and hovered above Yi Shiwen's head. Then it began to operate on its own. The surging energy was first absorbed by the broken dragon stone, and then transformed into Yi Shiwen's body. Suddenly, he felt as if he had been saved. They couldn't break Ling Fei's defense. However, they were afraid of being hit by Ling Fei. They would die if they were hit, and they would be injured if they were hit. The might of the stone was unimaginably great. The scene was so silent that even a pin drop could be heard. Ling Fei also followed closely behind. She suddenly jumped like a fish and jumped into the broken dragon pond like a mermaid. Yi Shiwen didn't know whether it was originally compatible or not. Originally, the level of Yi Shiwen's Celestial Emperor tool refining technique wasn't considered to be very high. It was mostly used for tool refining. However, he hadn't expected that the two of them wouldn't escape in a sorry state even after a long time had passed. The broken dragon pond was still full of stormy waves. Countless energy ores were being used, but there wasn't the slightest change. You can practice in this broken dragon pond for a year. You can cultivate in the broken dragon pool for a year. After a year, it will be time for us to fight with the Imperial Weapon Pavilion. Especially you, Deadly Scholar. You are very strong, but your origin is unknown. But it doesn't matter. We, the Duanlong family, have always recruited talents without any restrictions. As long as you are willing to work for the Duanlong family, we will naturally give you the necessary support. Especially with the help of the Broken Dragon Pool, this year's cultivation will be equivalent to countless years of cultivation. Duanlong Wushang said, Boom! The more inheritance one obtained from the Tool Emperor, the more powerful he would be. just like the broken dragon stone that was left behind by the Tool Emperor in the past. In their opinion, Ling Fei had won the successive battles with ease. Everyone hadn't even probed the bottom line of her strength. Even the craziest person didn't expect that Yi Shiwen would defeat Broken Dragon Wushang so easily in the end. Ling Fei also looked excited. However, Yi Shiwen didn't know this little girl. He probably didn't care about it at all. But even so, the Broken Dragon clan was still helpless in the face of the Tool Emperor's pavilion's aggressiveness. Yi Shiwen was sitting cross-legged in the center of this whirlpool. His whole body was surrounded by the endless energy of the Broken Dragon Pond. Separated by the Broken Dragon Pond, he could barely sense that the two of them were still alive even with his martial power. He couldn't really find out their situation. Broken Dragon Wushang suddenly frowned and thought, I wanted to remind them to be careful of the surging energy in the Broken Dragon Pond. Even a Dao, confirming expert, wouldn't dare to act recklessly. But forget it. I'll let them suffer a little so that they can understand the power of our Broken Dragon clan. They entered a secret space. From the inside to the outside, it was covered by countless arrays without any loopholes. At the same time, any means of directly crossing through space was sealed. This was the core of the Broken Dragon clan. Don't worry. I, Deadly Scholar, am not an ungrateful person. This time, you'll see, said Yi Shiwen. Otherwise, Ling Fei wouldn't have been able to escape from so many experts. After defeating Broken Dragon Wushang, Yi Shiwen naturally obtained one of the three places. Such combat power was simply unmatched. Broken Dragon Wushang frowned and said, Don't let your guard down. Feng Qingji's strength is more tyrannical than many old monsters. Originally, we cultivated Broken Dragon Wushang and concealed the news of his Dao confirming in order to catch him off guard. But now it seems that it's not necessary. Your strength is indeed amazing, but you'd better confirm your Dao. Otherwise, I'm afraid you won't be his opponent. The third place was successfully taken by Ling Fei. This result was also beyond Yi Shiwen's expectations. But before he could think too much, Broken Dragon Wushang brought them into the depths of the Broken Dragon clan. His body glowed with a golden light. The surging energy was being absorbed by him at an astonishing speed. No one had any objections. On the contrary, Ling Fei wasn't surprised. She just looked around curiously. His brows furrowed slightly. The amount of energy gushing over was too tremendous. Just a single drop of energy water from the Broken Dragon pool could allow an ordinary person to reach the 10,000 longevity realm. From this, one could tell how tremendous it was. Yi Shiwen was a strong dragon, a dark horse. But this strong dragon was a little too strong, and the quality of this dark horse was a little too good. But what he didn't see was that not long after he left, above the Broken Dragon pool, in the midst of countless stormy waves, there was clearly a huge whirlpool that was constantly rotating. The entire huge sea surface was being absorbed by this huge force. Therefore, a huge whirlpool formed around him, radiating outwards with him as the center. It was very prosperous and powerful. He frowned, but soon he had to leave. Without permission, it was not allowed to stay in the Broken Dragon pool for a long time. Even an elite disciple like him was no exception. Outside of the God Transformation Abyss, no force that Yi Shiwen knew was comparable to the Broken Dragon clan. Don't worry. He directly opened his domain and operated the Observing Person scripture. His whole body turned into a huge universe. This universe slowly operated, and countless energy was absorbed. At the same time, he was also operating the Celestial Emperor weapon refining technique. He actually began to use the Celestial Emperor weapon refining technique to refine this Broken Dragon stone. In the Weapon Emperor heaven, only the Weapon Emperor path was the true assistant path. It was also the only recognized mainstream martial arts. This is considered fulfilling our original promise. I think you should have heard of the Broken Dragon pool. It is said that it was left behind by His Majesty, the Weapon Emperor, in the past. Cultivating in it will definitely make rapid progress. The key lay in the fight for the third spot. Everyone was taken aback. In the end, it was Ling Fei who fought all the way to the end. She won the final victory without any suspense by relying on the two divine tools, one for attack and one for defense. The broken dragon stone gave him a very complicated feeling. He didn't know what other mysteries were hidden in it. However, the things left behind by the Weapon Emperor were obviously not that simple. This kind of opportunity, even for a core disciple like him, was not something that could be encountered at any time. As he continued to refine the broken dragon stone, his level was improving at an astonishing speed. Of course, the mysterious space within his body was also constantly analyzing the Celestial Emperor weapon refining technique and the various mysteries of the broken dragon stone. It was no wonder that the Broken Dragon clan regarded this place as a hidden secret. The Broken Dragon pool could cultivate a large number of experts continuously. However, it was obvious that the Broken Dragon clan had taken a different path. They didn't open it to ordinary people. Instead, they used it to cultivate a small number of elite geniuses. Otherwise, even a huge amount of energy wouldn't be able to withstand this kind of consumption. Chapter 2265. Countless energy continuously rushed into his body. His Celestial Emperor tool refining technique was also improving at an amazing speed. Anyway, it was the Duanlong family's wealth that was being consumed here, not his. He did not have to worry at all, especially as he refined more and more parts of the Broken Dragon Stone. He even had a lot of insights. He finally understood why the Broken Dragon Stone was the foundation of the Duanlong family. No wonder the Duanlong family did not hesitate to fall out with the Equipment Emperor Pavilion to keep the Broken Dragon Stone. In just a few short months, he was able to completely deduce the Broken Dragon Tablet smashing hand of the Broken Dragon clan by refining the Broken Dragon Stone. For the people of the Duanlong family, it was a sacred object. It was very rare for them to have the opportunity to comprehend it. They never thought of refining the Broken Dragon Stone. However, Yishuan did not have such a psychological barrier. He completely refined the Broken Dragon Stone as a magic tool. Even so, he found that there was no good way to refine the Broken Dragon Stone. It was almost like a powerful magic tool instead of a magic tool. He could only use its amazing hardness and strength to smash people. Even if the opponent had a magic tool, they would not be able to withstand such a smash. However, even so, the power was amazing, far beyond the imagination of ordinary people. Half a year's time passed in a flash. Yi Shiwen, who was immersed in cultivation, didn't feel the passage of time at all. In this half a year's time, he was constantly cultivating, constantly refining the energy in the Broken Dragon Pond, and constantly comprehending the martial arts of the Broken Dragon Stone. This made his realm rise rapidly. He had already reached the critical point of the initial stage of the longevity realm. If he wanted to go further, he could only rely on long-term cultivation and comprehension. Now, with the Tao pattern left by the Equipment Emperor on the Broken Dragon Stone, he had a feeling of sudden enlightenment. In addition to the crazy analysis and comprehension in the mysterious space, he had rushed to the middle stage of the immortal level in just half a year. It could almost be said that as long as he accumulated enough skills, it was only a matter of time to trigger the god's retribution. However, he still woke up because he felt the aura of the god's retribution. Someone is crossing the god's retribution. He immediately reacted. After experiencing the god's retribution in the Tianyuan mirror, he was particularly sensitive to the aura of the god's retribution. His spiritual force swept out, and he immediately saw that the person who was currently undergoing the tribulation was none other than Ling Fei. In the void, Ling Fei held a long sword in her hand as she battled against the deity tribulation. Although she didn't dare to release all of her aura because she was in the Broken Dragon clan, she still relied on the deity on her body. Overall, she was more scared than hurt. This god's retribution lasted for more than a month before it finally disappeared. Ling Fei had successfully crossed the god's retribution and entered the early stage of the immortal level. Ling Fei had crossed the divine tribulation. She automatically brought along the coercion of a deity. Rays of multicolored light descended from the sky and the earth. The endless divine radiance almost filled the entire space. This was the heaven celebration of the birth of a deity. During this process, Yi Shiwen discovered that there was another figure. It was none other than Broken Dragon Wu Yu. At that moment, all of his injuries had healed, and he was focusing on breaking through to intermediate immortal level. Yi Shiwen immediately immersed himself in cultivation again. He took advantage of the opportunity of free resources to cultivate desperately. A few months passed in a hurry. The surface of the Broken Dragon pool that was originally turbulent suddenly became completely calm. An amazing coercion radiated down and suppressed the surging energy of the Broken Dragon pool. What a terrifying and majestic energy this was. This unforeseen event alarmed the other two people in the Breaking Dragon Pond. Ling Fei and Broken Dragon Wu Yu had already experienced this before, so they reacted immediately. Crossing the deity tribulation. Someone was crossing the deity tribulation. Sure enough, they saw a figure breaking through the sky and flying to the top. It was Yi Shiwen's deity tribulation. Neither of them went out. The deity tribulation could be said to be the most terrifying tribulation in the life of countless creatures. The difficulty could be imagined. In particular, the pressure of the godly tribulation made them tremble with fear. How terrifying was this godly tribulation? It actually made them, the gods, feel a great threat. In the sky, countless tribulation clouds condensed and formed a huge eye in midair. This eye did not have the slightest emotion. It was extremely cold, but it carried an unimaginable coercion. Yi Shiwen did not dare to take it lightly. Yi Shiwen took a deep breath, and the qi in his body rushed out. This was the deity tribulation, and it was also the last and most critical moment before he became a deity. It was he who attracted the deity tribulation. This time, if he did not succeed, he would become an adult. Voila! A bolt of lightning struck down. However, what was surprising was that this bolt of lightning turned into a green dragon in the void. It bared its fangs and brandished its claws, and swallowed Yi Shiwen in one bite. Boom! Yi Shiwen blasted out the 6 paths of reincarnation fist and directly blasted the green dragon into pieces. An unparalleled and terrifying energy frenzy quickly swept out, and Yi Shiwen's clothes fluttered in the wind. He frowned. Both of his fists felt slightly numb. The power of this lightning deity tribulation was much more terrifying than he had imagined. Below, Broken Dragon Wu Yu could not hide the horrified look on his face. This was a variant of deity tribulation. Deity tribulation was already very terrifying. Not to mention, this was the most terrifying variant of deity tribulation. Even when he was crossing the deity tribulation, there was no such variant of deity tribulation. Once this variant of deity tribulation descended, it was almost invincible. He had only encountered a few variant of deity tribulation in the end when he was crossing the deity tribulation. However, even so, he had been tormented half to death. He might not have made it through if he had not relied on the divine pills that he had prepared beforehand to recover from his injuries. However, Yi Shiwen had actually encountered a variant of deity tribulation from the very beginning. Who the hell was he? How could he be so terrifying? Even Ling Fei's beautiful eyes widened. She had seen many geniuses among the fallen angel clan. However, she had never seen such a terrifying deity tribulation. As the little princess of the fallen angel clan, she only had a lively temperament. However, she was not an ignorant bumpkin. She was very clear about what this deity tribulation meant. Humph! Royal Father said that all the geniuses are in our fallen angel race. I wonder how shocked he would look if he saw this idiot crossing the tribulation. The corners of Ling Fei's mouth curled into a good-looking smile. It seemed as if she was imagining that person's shocked expression. However, she was also a little worried in her heart. Yi Shiwen's deity tribulation was simply ridiculously strong. It was unknown how much stronger it was than her deity tribulation. Even if Yi Shiwen was very strong, it would not be easy for him to cross it. It was far from just these two people. Such a big commotion had directly attracted the attention of the Broken Dragon clan. After all, this was the foundation of the Broken Dragon clan. It was impossible for them not to pay attention to it. Moreover, it was such a big commotion. This is deity tribulation? Damn, who the hell is this deadly scholar? How could he trigger such a terrifying deity tribulation? No wonder. No wonder he could defeat Broken Dragon Wu Yu. How could an ordinary person trigger such an amazing deity tribulation? Such a terrifying deity tribulation wouldn't destroy the Broken Dragon pawn, right? No, we have to arrange a matrix. We must not let his deity tribulation enter the Broken Dragon pond. Many experts of the Broken Dragon clan heaved a sigh of relief. Yi Xuan seemed to know the rules. So, he didn't dare to cross the deity tribulation in the Broken Dragon pond. Instead, he flew high up in the sky. This was a special space, and there was a strange energy everywhere. At this moment, it had completely transformed into tribulation clouds. Yi Xuan raised his head and looked at the huge eye in the sky. He understood that it was the will of the heavenly way. This was not the will of the tool Emperor Heaven, but the will of the entire universe. No matter where he was, he must face the test of the heavenly way if he wanted to cross the deity tribulation. If he could pass the deity tribulation, he would achieve the supreme way. If he couldn't, he would turn into ashes. He had no other choice but to cross the deity tribulation here. It could even be said that he used the protection of the Broken Dragon clan to dare to cross the deity tribulation. Otherwise, even if he cultivated to the peak of the demigod realm, he wouldn't dare to cross the deity tribulation in the tool Emperor Heaven. What did crossing the deity tribulation mean? It meant that another creature was going to break away from the control of the heavens and become a supreme overlord. The heavens and earth wouldn't let this happen easily. The deity tribulation was also divided into two parts: natural calamity and man-made calamity. Geniuses were the deity tribulation. Man-made calamity was where many powerful existences sensed that someone was crossing the deity tribulation and came to get a share of the loot. In history, many people who crossed the deity tribulation eventually failed miserably. They fell short of success. This was not nonsense. It was a truth that had been verified countless times. Many people were killed when they were at their weakest after successfully transcending their tribulations. Some people even had their god shells snatched away, and some powerful Een spirits even entered their master god shells. When that happened, their tens of millions of years of bitter cultivation would go to someone else. At this time, the benefits of having a powerful inheritance could be seen. If he wasn't in the Broken Dragon clan, he would have to wait until he returned to the deity transformation abyss before he dared to cross the deity tribulation. With the protection of the experts in the deity transformation abyss, he didn't need to think too much. However, it was the same in the Broken Dragon clan. They still needed to use him and Ling Fei to resist the Tool Emperor Pavilion. Even if they wanted to turn hostile, it wouldn't be now. In the depths of the Broken Dragon clan, what kind of man-made calamity could reach this far? He could save himself a lot of trouble. Now, as long as he faced the natural calamity, he would undoubtedly be much more relaxed. Although it would attract the attention of countless people in the Broken Dragon clan, he didn't care. This was the most terrifying choice he had to face in his life. Chapter 2266. If he was not careful, he might die on the spot. He took a deep breath. Over the past 6 months, he had not only refined the Broken Dragon Stone, but had also begun to absorb the energy in the Broken Dragon Pool to cleanse his body and frantically accumulate power. Originally, he had calculated that it would take him hundreds of years to accumulate power. Now he had completed it in just half a year. Then, he had successfully summoned the God Tribulation. This was the time to test the results of his hundreds of years of cultivation. A heavy pressure pressed down on his heart. At this moment, he finally understood why Yimo had been constantly emphasizing that he needed to stabilize his foundation from the beginning to the end. Yes, it was the foundation. Just like building a house on flat land or on the beach, the degree of firmness was naturally self-evident. Before crossing the God Tribulation, if one's foundation was not solid, it would at most affect one's future development. However, if one's foundation was not really solid during the God Tribulation, then it was very likely that one would die. In the face of such a terrible God Tribulation, even if one's foundation was just a little bit unstable, they could only die under the Heaven Tribulation. Even for a peak demigod, There was less than 1 in 100 who could really successfully cross the God tribulation. After so many years in the Xian world, there was only one leader of the divine union, and he had relied on some tricks. Not to mention the Lord of the Abyss. It was unknown how many years he had cultivated, how many years he had been suppressed, and how much his foundation had been polished before he could cross the God tribulation. These were all dragons and phoenixes, especially the Lord of the Abyss, who had accumulated for many years. Once he was allowed to truly prove his Tao, and if he was left alone, he would grow to an unbelievable level in 10,000 years. His foundation would be incomparably solid, and even after proving his Tao, his cultivation speed would be much faster than ordinary people. Even if he was given another 100 years, given Yi Shiwen's level, he might not be his opponent. Fortunately, Yi Shiwen had encountered him early on. At this moment, when he thought about it carefully, he felt somewhat fortunate. This was the time to test the results of his hundreds of years of cultivation, so he could not have the slightest bit of luck. Whoosh! Countless lightning bolts struck down, and in the void, they directly turned into incomparably powerful, fierce beasts. These were not just formed by lightning. They only had the form, but not the spirit. Yi Shiwen could even feel the pulsating aura of blood in the bodies of these lightning, fierce beasts. Their blood was vigorous and surging, as if they were real divine beasts or fierce beasts that had been resurrected. It was unimaginably powerful. Yi Shiwen didn't hesitate. He covered his body with the 5 Emperor's battle armor and directly rushed into the midst of these ominous beasts and mythological beasts like a matchless god of war. What kind of technique is this? Broken Dragon Wuyu's eyes flashed with brilliance. When he was fighting with Yi Shiwen before, he did not feel that Yi Shiwen had such amazing means. In other words, after Yi Shiwen had completely released his combat power, he was actually still hiding his strength. In an instant, he clenched his fists. He simply couldn't imagine that someone could defeat him while hiding their true strength. Is this his original strength? He wasn't sure. After being tricked by Yi Shiwen several times, he wasn't sure anymore. Who knew whether he had hidden his true strength or not? However, he had indeed guessed correctly. This was not Yi Shiwen's ultimate strength. Bang! Yi Shiwen's fist punched through the head of a white tiger. Blood splashed everywhere, accompanied by lightning sparks bursting out. His entire arm was submerged inside the tiger's head. His fighting method was exceptionally fierce. However, at the same time, his 5 Emperor's battle armor was torn apart by the white tiger's claws. Blood also splattered out. At the same time, even more ferocious beasts pounced forward. Each of them was more terrifying than the previous one. All sorts of mystic skills were released. A few phoenixes danced in the air, and countless Nanming leaf fire burned through the sky. There was also Kunping descending to the world. The northern underworld cold pool surged with unimaginable power. Those masters of the Broken Dragon family were almost dumbfounded. Who are these people? Even if they had successfully confirmed their Tao, facing such a terrifying, ominous beast group would be a dead end. Many people were drenched in cold sweat. Fortunately, this was just heaven's retribution. If it was really the invasion of these mythological beasts, they might have to obediently surrender. In the face of these innately tyrannical mythological beasts, their resistance was meaningless. In the devastation of these mythological beasts, Yi Shiwen's ferocity was also stimulated. The star beast bloodline in his body was suddenly stimulated. His eyes were red, like a humanoid ominous beast, and an earth-shattering ferocious aura erupted. "Come on!" he roared, rushed into these ominous beasts again, and launched a shocking massacre. He could blow up an ominous beast with one punch and one kick, but there were more ominous beasts that left huge wounds on his body. Blood was constantly splashing out everywhere. Some of it was his, and some of it was those of these mythological beasts. These mythological beasts were not just lightning heaven's retribution. They had the blood essence of real mythological beasts in their bodies. Moreover, the heavenly Tao had pulled out their dissipated essence from the long river of history. Although it could not be compared with their peak state now, it was already terrifying enough. Just by looking at the horrified expression of those people from the Broken Dragon family, one could tell a thing or two. It was completely unimaginably powerful. Boom, boom, boom. The battle went on for an unknown period of time. There was simply no end to these monsters. Yishuan did not have a good piece of flesh on his body. Flesh and blood were flying everywhere, but he did not dare to stop at all. He kept fighting. Fighting had almost become his instinct. 6 paths of reincarnation fist animal path. Yi Shiwen roared and blasted out the animal path with his fist. In the past, Yimo had already taught Yi Shiwen the complete cultivation method of the 6 paths of reincarnation fist. However, to successfully cultivate it, one could imagine the difficulty. Especially the animal path. If it was not practiced with the blood essence of many ancient ominous beasts and ancient mythological beasts, then even if the animal path of the 6 paths of reincarnation fist was successfully cultivated, its power would be greatly reduced. It might even affect the final cultivation of the 6 paths of reincarnation fist. But now, where could he go to kill so many mythological beasts? Even if he really had the ability, doing so would probably cause these mythological beasts to fight desperately. It could be said that the possibility of cultivating the animal path was almost impossible. And now, he actually wanted to use the blood essence of the mythological beasts contained in the heavenly tribulation to practice his fist. The heavenly tribulation wanted to use these mythological beasts to kill him, but he used these heavenly tribulations to practice his martial arts. Such an idea could be said to be unprecedented. How many people dared to do this? In the process of crossing the divine tribulation, who did not tremble with fear, fearing that they would die tragically under the divine tribulation? He killed countless ferocious beasts. Although these ferocious beasts only had a small amount of essence blood in their bodies, and they were far from the real ferocious beasts, and they were not at their peak, there were still so many of them. After killing for 10 days and 10 nights, his 6 paths of reincarnation fist finally had a form. Behind him, an incomparably huge 6 paths of reincarnation wheel began to rotate slowly. When it rotated to the animal path, suddenly countless ominous beasts rushed out. Qilin, Azure Dragon, Phoenix, Kuan Peng, and many other ferocious beasts or divine beasts whose names were known or unknown rushed out at once, almost forming an army of ferocious beasts, attacking those divine beasts in the heavenly tribulation. Yi Shiwen's face revealed a somewhat satisfied smile. This animal path was really worthy of being the group battle technique of the 6 paths of reincarnation fist. Its power was endless. If he could really cultivate it to the peak, he could almost summon these ominous beasts from the long river of history, resurrect them, and fight for him. No matter how many enemies there were in front of this army of ominous beasts and mythological beasts, they could not be compared at all. What technique is this? It's so strong. Many people were shocked. They did not know that this was the 6 paths of reincarnation fist. If it was in the outside world, many people would probably be able to recognize that this was the 6 paths of reincarnation fist. However, although they could not recognize this technique, it did not prevent them from feeling the power of the animal path. It was almost invincible. When the time comes, if we can recruit this deadly scholar, there will be plenty of opportunities to force him to hand over this martial technique. Now, there were already many people who wanted Yi Shiwen to hand over this martial technique. After all, in their opinion, Yi Shiwen had enjoyed the cultivation of their Duanlong clan. It was natural for him to make some contributions to the Duanlong clan. This level of martial technique was too amazing. Even the clan lord would be alarmed. Yi Shiwen did not care. The magnetic orb was already like an arrow on the bow. It had to be released. He had to cultivate the animal path. As for their greed, it did not matter at all. Anyway, he did not plan to stay in the Weapon Emperor Heaven for long. Let them find it. Those ominous beasts and mythological beasts that he blasted out were quickly submerged. However, he did not care. He just continued to blast out the animal path. Slowly, more and more ominous beasts and mythological beasts were killed by him. The blood essence in their bodies was refined by him. This blood essence was their key. On the contrary, it did not matter to their physical bodies. Heavenly tribulation could replenish and regenerate them at any time. Now that it had been plundered by Yi Shiwen, naturally, it could not be reborn. On the contrary, Yi Shiwen continued to refine these blood essence. The animal path became more and more proficient, and slowly, the power of these ominous beasts became stronger and stronger. Under this situation, the trouble that these ominous beasts caused to Yi Shiwen became less and less. Slowly, they could no longer pose a fatal threat to Yi Shiwen. Finally, Yi Shiwen won a breather. Taking advantage of this time, he continued to repair the countless wounds on his body and constantly operated the Phoenix regeneration technique. At this time, he did not care how much qi was consumed. As long as he could prove his Tao, he could instantly replenish it. Gulp, gulp! The void seemed to be boiling. A yellowish water rushed out from the space and instantly formed a huge sea. Chapter 2267. This is the Azura clan's 6 paths of reincarnation fist. Ling Fei suddenly jumped up. She was born in a rich and powerful clan, so she had extensive knowledge. How could she not recognize that this was the Azura clan's 6 paths of reincarnation fist? She had seen some Heaven's Pride experts of the Azura clan display the 6 paths of reincarnation fist in the past. Those Heaven's Pride experts of the Azura clan were very ugly. However, she still remembered this legendary martial art of the Demon King level. There weren't many martial arts in the entire devil world that could be compared to this martial art. One could well imagine how rare it was. Even the Fallen Angel clan didn't have a martial art that could be compared to this martial art. The reason was very simple. It was because the Fallen Angel clan didn't have a Demon King level character. However, the Azura clan's 6 paths of reincarnation fist was no longer complete after several upheavals in the devil world. This was a well-known fact. Moreover, no one in the Azura clan could practice the 6 paths of reincarnation fist. At most, they could practice the Azura path. However, the might of the Azura path fist technique was enough to stand shoulder to shoulder with some amazing martial arts of the Fallen Angel clan. However, how could she not know such an obvious characteristic? She was also one of the 8 great royal clans of the devil world. The others didn't know what kind of martial art this was. However, this didn't prevent them from being amazed. Yi Shiwen's speed in cutting the lightning tribulation had undoubtedly become much faster after he had practiced the animal path in the void. Moreover, the benefits of practicing the 6 paths of reincarnation fist were needless to say. His understanding of the 6 paths of reincarnation fist had improved at an astonishing speed. The yellow spring water under his feet began to surge unceasingly. It instantly formed an incomparably huge yellow spring sea. Monstrous waves surged up. Everything that was submerged would be corroded. A dreadful astral wind began to blow in the sky. Every astral wind could blow away the bones and flesh of an ordinary Paong realm expert. They would die without a burial place. This was the most dreadful thing. In addition to the astral winds in the sky, countless flames also fell from the void and fell on Yi Shiwen's body one by one. His body issued a sizzling sound. This was a dreadful tribulation. It was a kind of dreadful tribulation fire that would fall only when the world was about to be destroyed. It was rumored that when a world was about to be destroyed, such flames would fall from the sky and burn everything to ashes. Then, the world would start a new reincarnation cycle. These thunderbolts, astral winds, and world-destroying divine flames could directly hit the body of a demigod and could completely destroy a demigod. In fact, even Yi Shiwen's skin and flesh would be lacerated by the wind. This was an unimaginably dreadful tribulation. Yi Shiwen finally understood what the physical body meant for a formidable expert. Many things that seemed completely unimportant in the past would turn into shortcomings during the divine tribulation. And these shortcomings would eventually take one's life. If cultivation was said to be a sea of bitterness where stormy waves could be seen everywhere, then the physical body would be the ship. The stronger the ship, the greater the possibility of passing through the sea of bitterness. These tribulations were the stormy waves in the sea of bitterness. Those who did not have a strong enough physical body would naturally be destroyed by the stormy waves. And Yi Shiwen, who practiced the gilded tyrant form, naturally had the strongest and strongest ship. At this moment, his advantage was fully manifested. In the eyes of many, it was completely a situation of death. But for him, it was not necessarily so. The divine tribulation fire in the sky began to change. Samadhi true fire, bone freezing fire, Namingli fire, Ninine ghost fire, and many other flames that he had never heard of began to fall. Many of them had been extinct for countless years and only existed in legends. One by one, they fell from the sky and fell on Yi Shiwen's body, wanting to burn him alive. Those Dao, confirming experts of the Duanlong clan, almost fainted when they saw this scene. Those who originally had some tricks up their sleeves now took the initiative to restrain their thoughts. What a joke! These divine tribulations were so horrifying. How would they dare to participate in it? Otherwise, even these Dao confirming experts would be trapped in it if they were not careful. Even if they were already Dao confirming experts, they had to be careful when facing these various kinds of strange flames. One carelessness and they might be burned alive. Not to mention the yellow spring water that gushed from the ground could melt people. The astral wind that fell from the sky could blow people apart. They couldn't imagine how someone's divine tribulation could be so terrifying. Even when they were undergoing divine tribulations, the most they had seen was some kind of heterogeneous flame. It was impossible for so many heterogeneous flames to appear. The difficulty of crossing the divine tribulation was almost exponentially increased. What is the background of this deadly scholar? Why is this divine tribulation so horrifying? It's so horrifying. Even if I were to cross the divine tribulation now, I wouldn't have much confidence. Could it be that this deadly scholar has done something that angers the heavens? Otherwise, how could the heavens send such a horrifying divine tribulation? Many people could not help but take a breath of cold air. Their faces were pale, and they did not dare to explore with their divine senses. Once they did, they would be destroyed by the divine tribulation, leaving nothing behind. Therefore, they could not fully see Yi Shiwen's current situation. They could only observe with their naked eyes. Many people opened their Dharma eyes to see clearly. These powerful divine tribulations all fell on Yi Shiwen's body and directly blew him up. His flesh and blood were a mess, as if he would be completely submerged in these divine tribulations at any time. Yi Shiwen continued to use various martial arts to resist these divine tribulations. However, it was still a cup of water because there were too many of these divine tribulations. They were densely packed and instantly pounced on him. He did not have any chance to breathe. However, this was not the way to go on. He operated the Celestial Emperor tool refining art. Now that things had come to this, he could only safely pass this part by absorbing all these divine tribulations. Yi Shiwen roared again and operated the Celestial Emperor tool refining art. He actually used his entire body as a martial tool to cultivate. The golden divinities began to surge. The divine tribulations in the sky began to tremble under the surging real elemental energy. Countless tribulation flames, lightning tribulations, astral winds, and underworld water were absorbed by Qin Fang's body. They were used to forge his body, improving the compatibility between his spirit and body by countless times, and mending the flaws in his body. Many experts of the Broken Dragon clan were shocked when they saw this scene. This divine tribulations was such a terrifying thing. He actually absorbed them. Why didn't his body directly explode? Yi Shiwen's face revealed a somewhat uncomfortable expression. These various divine tribulations were absorbed into his body by his powerful great art of transformation, and were used to temper his gilded tyrant form. His gilded tyrant form was already close to perfection. In fact, it could even be said that it was perfect in the first place. Now, he wanted to go one step further. He had to tear his body apart and refine it again. This was like refining a good piece of steel to a stronger level. Then, he would have to put it back into the furnace and refine it again. For Yi Shiwen, the difficulty of this could be imagined. He had to tear his body apart and then refine it again. Moreover, in order to achieve this goal, he also had to operate many power techniques at the same time. Observing person scripture, great art of transformation, celestial emperor tool refining art, tyrant body scripture, all of these must be completely operated at the same time. If there was no enlightening mind, ancient tree to calm his mind, he would not dare to carry out such a crazy attempt. Rumble! There was such a roar everywhere, and no other sounds could be heard. It was completely covered by the sound of the divine tribulation. It was as if the world was destroyed and reborn. No one could imagine that someone's divine tribulation could be so strong. Many people who wanted to advance to the eternal realm did not have such a terrifying divine tribulations. Yi Shiwen gritted his teeth and persisted. He did not know how much time had passed. He only felt that every minute and every second was so long. Every moment his body was constantly being torn apart. At the same time, there must be a place that had been completely transformed into a massive chaos. Many people did not even dare to look at it. They were afraid that they would be impacted by all kinds of chaotic great Tao and lose their confidence to advance further. The divine tribulations continued to fall like this for a full month. The thunder tribulation, astral wind, underworld spring water, and world-extinguishing divine flame did not show any signs of disappearing. It was terrifying. Suddenly, finally, the incomparably huge divine tribulation's eye in the sky disappeared without a trace. The various divine tribulations that originally filled the sky also finally disappeared, only revealing a universe that had been completely transformed into chaos. Could it be that the divine tribulations had ended? Many people inevitably had such a thought. In their opinion, there was only one possibility for the divine tribulations to stop for no reason. That was that Yi Shiwen was completely dead. He had died under the divine tribulations. This was not impossible. It did not mean that the more powerful the expert, the less dangerous the divine tribulations would be. Because the more powerful the expert, the more terrifying the divine tribulations they faced were. But very soon, they clearly saw Yi Shiwen sitting on the ground in a sorry state. Although he was in an extremely sorry state, he had unexpectedly survived. No one thought that he could survive such an intense divine tribulations, but he did it. And at this moment, in the sky, in the depths of the endless universe, a long river appeared out of thin air. This was a long river of time. Its beginning was in the distant ancient times, in the early days of the universe's birth. Its end was even more boundless, all the way until the end of the universe's destruction. This was the long river of time, and also the long river of history. And in this long river of history, many of Yi Shiwen's past events from a very long time ago had actually manifested from weak to strong. Chapter 2268. Yi Shiwen couldn't stop panting, but the wounds on his body were recovering at an amazing speed. He knew that this was the last part of the divine retribution, cutting off his past and future, so that he truly didn't exist in the three realms or the five elements. He would transcend the control of the heavenly way and break free from the control of the heavenly way on his lifespan. Thus, he would truly reach the realm of immortality. As long as it was a life, it was under the control of the heavenly way. There was such a thing as lifespan. It was just that some lives had a very long lifespan, while others had a very short lifespan. Regardless of how long or short it was, it couldn't transcend the control of the heavenly way. However, it would be different after advancing to the immortality realm. From then on, he would jump out of the three realms and five elements. The heavenly way wouldn't be able to control him. He would truly be free. And this river of time represented his lifespan. From the place where people were born until death, this was a long road. Especially for warriors, their lifespans were even longer. Ordinary mortals, no matter how much they struggled, it was useless. They couldn't escape from this river of time. Eventually, they would die like thousands of rivers flowing into the boundless sea. To prove one's Tao, one had to jump out of the river of fate and onto the shore. That way, no matter how turbulent the river of fate was, unless one was pushed down by someone, one's life and death would have nothing to do with the expert who proved one's Tao. At the same time, it was also the most dangerous step. It was the easiest for others to take advantage of it. Those countless phantoms had to be killed one by one. If they couldn't be killed, then it might leave a flaw. Not to mention that their lifespan couldn't reach boundless. If these phantoms were captured, then it might even become a fatal weakness for them. It was even more important than the previous divine retribution. Suddenly, his body turned into thousands and thousands of phantoms. He directly rushed into the river of time and began to kill his past and future crazily. As long as he killed these past and future, then he would truly prove his Tao and become a divine retribution. All of this took a long time to describe, but in fact it only took a few breaths. In that river of fate, many phantoms were killed by him in the air. He killed all the way from the back. At this time, a big hand grabbed from the void and directly pulled down the figure that Yi Shiwen could move in the river of fate. Yi Shiwen was suddenly startled. This meant that someone wanted to deal with him. This was the most critical moment for him, and also the most important moment for him. He couldn't allow anyone to disturb him. Once the shadow was captured, it would be tantamount to the opposite party having a very big handle on him. And from now on, he would have to obey the opposite party's orders. Who is it? Show yourself. Yi Shiwen was thoroughly enraged. Unexpectedly, someone was plotting against him from behind. A space-breaking sword appeared in his hand, and he suddenly chopped down towards the void. Swoosh! A huge crack appeared in the void. It was completely torn apart, as if it had been torn apart on the spot by some powerful force. The big hand was cut in the air and directly revealed a black shadow. This black shadow was wearing a black cloak, and it was completely impossible to see what it looked like or who it was. Yi Shiwen suddenly became furious. At this moment, it was completely self-evident how important it was to him. Now, someone actually wanted to take advantage of the situation and cause trouble for him. One could imagine how angry he was in the end. Swoosh! A long whip broke through the air and lashed out from the hand of the cloaked man. It seemed as if a long dragon had lashed through the chaotic airflow. Then, an unimaginable blood-red radiance appeared on the surface of the whip as it struck towards Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen sneered and said, "Do you really think that I'm a pushover?" He stepped forward and shattered the vacuum. Golden divine power completely rushed out. The space-breaking sword in his hand crushed the void and fiercely hit the long whip. Boom! There was a huge vibration and blood splashed out. The cloaked man's palm had been completely shattered by Yi Shiwen's terrifying strength. His gilded tyrant form was already very powerful. Not to mention, he had borrowed the strength of the god's tribulation to refine his god's shell. One could well imagine how powerful his god's shell would be with the strength of his gilded tyrant form. He raised his head, and it seemed that he didn't expect Yi Shiwen to be able to burst out such amazing combat power. Even if he had already crossed the heavens' retribution, he seemed to be even more difficult to deal with at this time. Go to hell! Yi Shiwen stepped forward and held the sword with both hands. He directly chopped down with the momentum of splitting a mountain. The sword energy crisscrossed and split the void. Countless principles completely manifested. At this moment, he didn't need to use any exquisite sword technique at all. He was completely suppressing the cloaked man with his strength. Bang! The cloaked man screamed and was blasted away by Yi Shiwen. All the bones in his body had been completely broken by Yi Shiwen's terrifying divine coercion. But this cloaked man didn't have the slightest intention of backing down. Although his expression couldn't be seen, it could be imagined that he was extremely crazy. His whole body also completely released the coercion of a divine coercion. He was also a Tao-confirming expert. One after another, the gods' rule chains were completely intertwined. While he was frantically recovering, he once again turned the long whip into a long dragon and blasted towards Yi Shiwen. It seemed that he didn't care about life and death at all. He only wanted Yi Shiwen to die. Yi Shiwen held the space-breaking sword in his hand, and its power was infinite. His skill was even more powerful than before he crossed the god's retribution. The injuries caused by the god's retribution were also recovering at an amazing speed. It could be said that he was getting stronger every minute and second. Yi Shiwen couldn't kill him before. Now it was even more impossible to kill him. Countless sword techniques were now completely integrated into one. Emperor's arrival. Under the transformation of the terrifying sword intent, Yi Shiwen had completely become an emperor among swords. An amazing sword river slashed down, and the cloaked man had no way to block it at all. It directly blasted into his body, and a huge bloody scar burst out. The cloaked man opposite him seemed to be completely unaware. He became more and more crazy. He completely disregarded these injuries and blasted towards Yi Shiwen. The long whip roared like a long dragon. Beast Dao! Yi Shiwen persisted. With a loud roar, he blasted out a punch, and countless figures of roaring mythological beasts appeared. This was a world of Beast Dao. Countless mythological beasts and ferocious beasts were completely resurrected at this moment. They formed an army of ferocious beasts and rushed towards the cloaked man. This was a complete world. When it came down, it completely destroyed the world. Even the cloaked man, who had already gone mad, was crushed to death. All the bones in his body were completely crushed to pieces. Human Dao Fist. Yi Shiwen blasted out another punch. This time it was the world of Human Dao. The surging 3,000 mortal realms turned into a picture scroll, appearing out of thin air, and then pressed down. This was a world dominated by humans, and it completely suppressed the cloaked man. This time, the cloaked man's vitality was completely cut off. His body collapsed on the spot, turning into a mass of meat paste in the air. Yi Shiwen did not show any mercy at all. Cutting off a person's path was tantamount to a life and death enmity. On this issue, he would not show any mercy. Then, he once again killed his way into the river of fate. With the previous lesson, he did not dare to kill with all his strength. Instead, he divided some of his attention. He also knew that this cloaked man was not simple. What kind of place was this? It could be said to be the most important place in the Duanlong clan. It was impossible for outsiders to enter. Therefore, it was most likely that someone in the Duanlong clan made a move. It was a vicious preparation. This person wanted to take away one of his Dharmakaya. In that case, they would be able to control him. No matter what level his cultivation had reached, it was impossible to eliminate him. Unless he could regain his Dharmakaya one day, he would be enslaved forever. One could imagine how vicious this method was. Therefore, Yi Shiwen was particularly angry. However, Yi Shiwen did not intend to find trouble with them, because there was no need. He would not stay in the Duanlong clan for a long time. Therefore, it did not matter at all. Would he stay for this matter? More importantly, there were too many masters in the Duanlong clan. The gains did not make up for the losses. However, he also remembered this matter in his heart. Sooner or later, he would have the opportunity to get back at them. Moreover, there was another idea in his mind. Anyway, he had successfully used the Broken Dragon Pawn to prove his Dao. When the time came, he could just leave. Whether the Duanlong clan lived or died had nothing to do with them. If they were defeated and could not hand over the Broken Dragon Stone, the Duanlong clan would be dead. This could be considered as getting rid of his resentment. However, that would be a matter for a long time in the future. Yi Shiwen probably would not be able to see it. He did not say anything, but it did not mean that he intended to let this matter go. The anger in his heart could not be quelled. Naturally, he wanted the Duanlong clan to pay the price. Shwa, shwa, shwa. He constantly slashed out sword lights, tearing apart his past self in the river of fate. He killed his way to the true martial domain. At that time, he was still the weakest. Fortunately, besides himself, no one else was able to see his entire life, and they could only see the numerous afterimages that were formed. Otherwise, wouldn't his identity as a fake treasure demon be exposed in an instant? However, when he killed the last figure, he discovered that the many mysterious phenomena of ascending to godhood that he had imagined did not appear. In other words, after experiencing so many gods' tribulations, he did not become a god. How could this be? His cold sweat instantly dripped down. How could he not become a god? What was he stuck at? He immediately began to calculate. In the sky, the river of fate became fainter and fainter. Slowly, it began to disappear. Finally, after some precise calculations, Yi Shiwen finally discovered where the problem lay. It was his previous life. Chapter 2269. Although this problem had existed in the past, it had never really become an obstacle for him to advance further. Proving one's Tao required cutting off the past and future, as well as the shackles of the mortal world. It did not mean that one would become an emotionless monster. In particular, the wind and thunder wings that had not changed for many years had also evolved at that moment. They were upgraded to the light wings, and their speed was more than 10 times faster than before. Many people were even more ferocious. Since something like this had already happened, the two sides were already at each other's throats. In for a penny, in for a pound, in for a pound, in for a pound. How dare you threaten us? An old deity spoke. His tone was filled with shock and anger. However, to maintain this state required a lot of qi. Normally, the wind wings could only cover a distance of about 100,000 kilometers. Even then, he would have to go all out. Of course, they did not know that the broken dragon stone that they had been searching for was in Yi Shiwen's hands. Otherwise, they would have gone crazy. More importantly, although he did not completely prove his Tao this time, his strength had greatly improved. His understanding of martial arts was incomprehensible in the past. His physical body had long been baptized into a divine shell, and he could see through everything. Many martial arts had undergone earth-shaking changes in an instant. Did this deadly scholar succeed in proving his Tao? If he did not, then the previous divine tribulations were not fake. However, if he did prove his Tao, why did he not see the heavenly phenomena when he proved his Tao? However, the various things in his previous life had turned into a knot in his heart. It could never be resolved in his heart. Although he understood all kinds of principles, not everything in this world could be explained with principles. Yi Shiwen stood with his hands behind his back and said, "Why? Why don't you come out and give me an explanation?" In any case, it was impossible to avoid this experience. It is precisely because of this that I did not go on a killing spree. Yi Shiwen's expression was cold. He was not joking. Otherwise, do you think I would still be here now? More importantly, after going through the baptism, the qi in Yi Shiwen's body was transformed into spiritual power. This was many times more advanced than qi. The energy provided by the two was like a warship that was originally burning coal, but now was powered by nuclear power. Having a portion of one's self snatched away and then being controlled by another to become a slave, this kind of thing was common and not rare. The methods used could be said to be extremely vicious. This kind of thing was a taboo for many Tao-confirming experts because there were many people who encountered this kind of thing. It was a part of the divine tribulation, a man-made disaster. Although it was understandable, it still made countless people angry. Once this matter was spread out, with the strength of the Duanlong clan, it naturally wouldn't arouse the public's anger, and people would come to settle accounts with them. However, their reputation would naturally plummet. If he wanted to prove his Tao, he had to let go of everything in the past. He could let go of everything in this life, and there was nothing he couldn't let go of. Many people couldn't help but bitterly smile in their hearts. Why bother? Originally, they had the chance to recruit this genius with a bright future. In the future, the Duanlong clan would have another peerless heaven's favorite. This time, he had succeeded in proving his Tao, but he had also failed. It was imperative for him to go to the heaven realm. After leaving the Tool Emperor Heaven, he had to go to the heaven realm. If he couldn't solve this problem, he would never be able to prove his Tao. Even if he became a god, his lifespan would be exhausted sooner or later, and he would become the first god in history to exhaust his lifespan. Everyone was a little stunned, looking at this strange situation. With a casual flap of the light wings, he could travel 300,000 kilometers. Compared to the explosive state of the lightning wings, it was not much worse. One could imagine the current level of Yi Shiwen's body movement technique. In his previous life, he was an ordinary person on that blue planet. These people were also Tao-confirming experts, so they naturally understood what it was like for a Tao-confirming expert to be ambushed at the most critical moment of cutting off his past and future self. What kind of explanation do you want? I was ambushed in the secret territory of the Duanlong clan, the the broken dragon pond. And it was when I was cutting off my past and future. I think you were very clear about what this means. Yi Shiwen's face was serious. His eyes could see through the layers of the void, and he could see the ugly expressions of the Tao-confirming experts of the Duanlong clan. Deadly scholar, how dare you be so ungrateful? If it weren't for our broken dragon pond, with your realm, when would you be able to reach Tao-confirming? Someone said angrily. Some of them also felt that Yi Shiwen was ungrateful and making a fuss over a minor issue. This would become the final obstacle for him to achieve Tao. Originally, he couldn't cultivate to the third level of the light wings because his understanding of the law of speed was completely insufficient. After experiencing the sharpness of the divine tribulation and transforming into the divine shell, many laws that he couldn't understand in the past were now under his control. To be exact, it should be said that all the Tao-confirming experts who were paying attention to this side were completely dumbfounded because they couldn't describe the strange scene in front of them. He was expressionless, but in the eyes of everyone, they naturally understood that the anger in his heart couldn't be washed away. The anger of a god was enough to turn the world upside down. Moreover, they had all seen Yi Shiwen's amazing divine tribulation just now. According to the standard of divine tribulation, Yi Shiwen's future was simply limitless and unimaginably bright. His past and future definitely didn't just start from the true martial domain. Although compared to his lifespan of hundreds of years, it was only a mere 20 years on Earth. It was the most important stage in this life of his. Then, he would become an eternal laughingstock. Life-stealing scholar, what kind of explanation do you want? An old voice rang out from the void, sounding a little embarrassed and angry. If there had to be a difference, it would be that his lifespan could not truly reach the level of being able to live forever. Since all of you have said so, then this matter is written off. You and I don't owe each other anything. Yi Shiwen pretended to leave. A man needs his face, and a tree needs its bark. When one cultivated to this level, most of the time they live for their face. Many esoteric things that couldn't be understood without the analysis of the mysterious space were now understood by him almost instantly. He had already passed the divine tribulation and experienced the baptism of the law. In essence, he was already no different from a god. Don't say that this has nothing to do with your Duanlong clan. Do you think people will believe this? The dignified Duanlong clan actually did this kind of despicable thing. Let's see if it will cause an uproar if it gets out. Yi Shiwen said with a straight face and continued to sneer. Otherwise, if he was surrounded by dozens or even more experts of the Eternal Realm, or even the Eternal Realm, it would be really hard to escape. All the things of his previous life were completely suppressed in the bottom of his heart. He usually wouldn't think about it, but it didn't mean that he had completely forgotten this part of the past. And he still had not cut off the past. With the past, it would appear in the future. With the past, the present, and the future, there would be a beginning and an end. This was something that couldn't be avoided. First, he was indeed very angry. Second, it would be abnormal for him to not say anything after being attacked like this. It would definitely arouse the suspicion of some old guys. Anyway, he was going to fall out with them, so he might as well take the opportunity to do so. On the contrary, this was still the most important stage in his life. But they couldn't accept that this junior was actually threatening them. They were all experts of the same Tao, but there was a difference in seniority. This person was too arrogant, and it was even in the secret territory of the Duanlong clan. If it happened to them, it would also be a dead knot that would not stop until one of them died. Do you think this is a threat? Yi Shiwen was expressionless. This is me seeking justice. If it were you, would you be indifferent? But these past and future could not affect him now. He had no past, and since there was no past, naturally there was no future. Without the past, naturally there was no life and death. This was to cut off the factor of the end of life from the source. And the clue to solve this problem was the legendary Heaven Realm. Perhaps he could find his way back there. Now, there was a feeling of pushing this genius to the opposite side. This was his biggest flaw. It was precisely because of this that even if he was in the layers of restrictions of the Duanlong clan, he was confident that he could escape unscathed. Of course, The premise was that he could catch them off guard. His gaze was as sharp as a knife, illuminating thousands of miles. Although he had not completely confirmed the Tao, his means were much more incisive than many gods. The scene was dead silent. If the sound of the raging waves beating on the shore in the broken dragon pool that was like the roar of an angry dragon, it was indeed so. But at this time, he had no other way. The flaw still existed, and he could not ignore it. Many dangerous auras appeared faintly. These masters of the Duanlong clan were not easy to deal with. Wait, this was the third form of the demon wings. Compared to the wind and thunder wings, this was a whole new level. In the past, when Yi Shiwen had the wind and thunder wings, he could burst out with his full strength in an instant. With the help of the lightning wings, he could fly as far as hundreds of thousands of kilometers in an instant. Although he had not confirmed the Tao, in fact, he was only a little bit away. There were many things that he was no different from ordinary gods. Many things that he could not understand before. Now he could completely understand with just a little thought. Yi Shiwen was expressionless, as if he did not feel the faint killing intent of these masters of the Duanlong clan. In fact, his whole body was tense. In this place, he naturally did not want to fall out with the Duanlong clan, but the arrow on the bow had to be fired. He understood the reason, but this had become his obsession, and he could not solve it. Chapter 2270. A black-clothed old man stood up and appeared directly from the void, no longer hiding in the endless void. He glanced at Yi Shiwen with a complicated expression, seemingly thinking about something. I am the father of Duanlong Wu Ming, the current master of the Duanlong family. Yi Shiwen's eyes suddenly became vigilant. The master of the Duanlong family had obviously surpassed the Eternal Realm and should be a master of the Eternal Realm. This level was a level higher than the Eternal Realm and was completely difficult to kill. As long as there was a cell left, he could be resurrected. His strength was also stronger. Yi Shiwen sneered and said, "Now that you've come out, do you intend to use force?" Of course, he did not believe that the other party had just arrived. Even if the cloaked man just now was not directly appointed by him, he probably had the intention to sit back and watch. This was a good way to control a master of Tao validation without any effort. It was really a good deal. This was something he probably did not expect. Even after the retribution, Yi Shiwen still retained amazing combat power, and after the baptism, his strength was stronger than before. In the end, it was all for naught. That's naturally impossible. The Duanlong family is indeed responsible for this matter. We will write off the matter of the Duanlong pool. From now on, we don't owe each other anything, said the master of the Duanlong family. Master, master, you can't. Many masters shouted one after another. The master of the Duanlong family did not care about the others, but said, if we say that we want to recruit you, I believe that after this matter, you will not believe us, right? Yi Shiwen nodded, not to mention that he would not stay in the Equipment Emperor Heaven for long. Even the natives of the Equipment Emperor Heaven would not believe them again. It was easy to destroy trust, but it was not so easy to build trust. So, it's a deal this time. As long as you help us win, we'll give you a divine pill that we got from the Divine Dan realm a long time ago. As long as you swallow it, you'll be able to consolidate your cultivation base very quickly. Moreover, it'll help you break through to the middle immortal level very quickly. What do you think? The Duanlong family had offered a great deal of pride. A divine pill, if coincidentally, could even give birth to a master of Tao validation level. It was precious, and the master of the Duanlong family's condition was only for Yi Shiwen to win against Feng Qingxi. Master, many old monsters cried out. In their opinion, this condition was simply too generous. As long as they did not suffer unimaginable injuries, they would be able to live forever. As time went by, their numbers would slowly increase. Therefore, their numbers were far greater than what ordinary people could imagine. However, under normal circumstances, they would be in closed-door training. Many of them would not appear in front of the world all year round. Among Tao-confirming experts, only those who had lived for 1,000,000 years could be considered qualified. Those who had lived for 100,000 years were considered young. Many of them would never have the chance to consume a divine pill in their entire lives. One could well imagine how generous these conditions were to them. Yi Shiwen pondered for a moment. He had originally planned to take this opportunity to leave. However, the situation would be completely different if he could obtain a divine pill. He already had a divine pill, but who would mind having more divine pills? Of course, the divine pill in his body was undoubtedly of a much higher grade. He had proven his Tao before, and it was almost equivalent to a divine shell. It could not be compared to ordinary divine pills. He originally planned to save it for later when he broke into the eternal realm to consume it. Now, he had another option. After proving his Tao, every step required countless years of accumulation. A divine pill could save him countless years of hard work. Why not? All right, but I have to see the divine pill first. Yi Shiwen glanced at the Duanlong clan lord and said, "All right, the divine pill is yours. If you win, the divine pill is yours. If you lose, you can forget about walking out of the Duanlong clan." The Duanlong clan lord said faintly. His words were incomparably cold. He did not have a good impression of this guy who injured his son. It was already very shrewd that he did not personally make a move. More importantly, this was a battle that the Duanlong clan could not afford to lose. "Master!" Everyone was stunned. What happened to their clan lord, who had always been decisive in killing? Why did he keep making concessions? It could be said that he was retreating step by step. Only Yi Shiwen knew something, because the broken dragon stone was in the Tianyuan mirror. For the Duanlong clan, this battle was really not something they could afford to lose. What was even worse than losing the Dragonbreak Stone was that once they lost and were unable to hand over the Dragonbreak Stone, they might be completely defeated by the Weapon Emperor Pavilion with a force that left no time for them to cover their ears, and countless years of inheritance would be severed in their hands. Duanlong clan patriarch didn't care about other people's objections and sent a divine pill to Yi Shiwen's hand. This was a golden divine pill. The divine pill was engraved with countless simple and unadorned Tao patterns. It exuded amazing medicinal efficacy and contained simple and profound principles. However, it was blocked by the array to prevent the divine pill from flying away. Even if it had no spiritual wisdom, the divine pill was already a divine object. Naturally, it had a spiritual nature. If one was not careful, it could fly away. Yi Shiwen directly received the divine pill into the Tianyuan mirror. His expression was calm, and there was no excitement, because swallowing the divine pill now was useless. Others did not know. Only he knew that he was stuck at the last step. He was a real demigod. He could not solve the fetters and knots of his previous life. Swallowing the divine pill was also in vain and too wasteful. Taking someone's money to eliminate a calamity was also something that should be done. At this time, in a spatial fault thousands of kilometers away from the Duanlong city, countless tyrannical figures were gathering. Screams could be heard again and again. An incomparably huge fighting arena was lying horizontally above. Around the fighting arena, many figures were floating in the void. They were hidden in the midair. Unexpectedly, all of them were powerhouses above the demigod realm. On the fighting arena, two figures were fiercely fighting. In an instant, it was unknown whether they would fight for 1,000 or 10,000 times. Boom! 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 Sounds of collision shook the sky. A figure separated from the fierce collision and the terrifying scene of destruction, and fell heavily on the fighting arena. Everyone fixed their eyes on the figure. It was the number one genius of the Duanlong clan, Broken Dragon Wu Yu. At this time, there was not a piece of good flesh on Broken Dragon Wu Yu's body. His flesh and blood were broken, and bone fragments were flying everywhere. Golden bones could be seen in many places. His eyes were filled with a gloomy expression. It was hard to imagine that someone could be so strong. He spat out a mouthful of blood, and the golden blood seeped into the ground. He was completely injured, and his vision began to blur. Such a heavy injury only happened when he fought with Yi Shiwen previously. He did not expect to be injured again in such a short time. Compared to the time when he fought with Yi Shiwen a year ago, Broken Dragon Wu Yu's time was much stronger. At that time, He relied on the integration of martial arts incarnation to barely touch the middle of the immortal level. A year later, with the baptism of the broken dragon pool, he had steadily stepped into the middle of the immortal level. However, he encountered the most terrible failure. Compared to the previous failure, it was more thorough and more terrifying. In front of him, a figure slowly appeared. It was a man in a gray robe. His eyes were as deep as a knife, and his face was calm. He did not even look at Broken Dragon Wu Yu. He just said faintly, "Broken Dragon Wu Yu, you disappoint me. The #1 genius of the Duanlong clan is just as so." Is there no one else in the Duanlong clan? Many people's expressions suddenly changed, especially the masters of the Duanlong clan. Their expressions were even more terrible. Looking at this person completely humiliating the Duanlong clan, they could not come up with any rebuttal. Broken Dragon Wu Yu struggled for a while, only feeling a heart-wrenching pain. His body could not move at all. The blow just now almost killed him. Even his god shell had encountered a bed that was difficult to recover from. He kept struggling, but it was useless. He kept spitting out blood. "Feng Qingji, don't be too proud. Our Duanlong clan is not without people." Broken Dragon Wu Yu spat out this sentence with difficulty. "There is someone else?" Feng Qingji sneered disdainfully. His eyes scanned the audience, but there was disdain in his eyes. "What 3 rounds? As long as there is someone from the Duanlong clan who can defeat me, you win today." Arrogant. "Damn it, bastard. What did you say?" Below the arena, Ling Fei noticed that everyone was looking at her. She could not help but say, "What are you guys doing? Don't tell me you expect me to defeat that guy. Are you kidding me?" Ling Fei shook her head. She knew very well that although her ability had reached the peak of early immortal level, and with the help of the god weapon, she could fight with an ordinary immortal level in the middle stage. However, she was definitely not this crazy person in front of her. She was not a member of the Duanlong clan. Why would she be willing to risk her life for the Duanlong clan? "I'm not his opponent. Don't look at me." Ling Fei crossed her arms, determined not to go. "I thought I was already very arrogant, but it seems that there is always someone better than you." A chuckle came from the void far away. When everyone heard this, their faces suddenly changed, especially Broken Dragon Wu Yu. He had a strange expression on his face. No one knew whether he was happy or depressed. He thought that even if Yi Shiwen did not come today, he could still win with his own ability. By then, he would fight with Yi Shiwen and regain his dignity. Who would have thought that he would be defeated by Feng Qingji? Now, he actually needed Yi Shiwen to save him. "Come out!" Feng Qingji shouted loudly. His voice turned into sound waves, rolling in all directions. Yi Shiwen's figure came from afar. Soon, he arrived at the arena and stood with his arms crossed. "This guy really came?" I said. "How could he be absent?" Ling Fei clasped her hands together and said excitedly, "Who is this guy?" Many people did not know who Yi Shiwen was, and they could not help but wonder. Chapter 2271. Many people didn't know where Yi Shiwen had come from, but it seemed that he was indeed very arrogant. You guys might not know him, but I'm sure you've heard of him. A year ago, Duanlong Wu Yu was defeated, and the person who defeated him was none other than this man before us. The life-stealing scholar defeated Duanlong Wu Yu without any suspense. What, he is the deadly scholar? I heard that he is very powerful, but I don't know the specific situation. It's sad. We are the dignified Duanlong family, but now we have to rely on outsiders. Yi Shiwen's strength is not bad. He defeated Duanlong Wu Yu before, but Duanlong Wu Yu is much stronger than before, but he still lost to Feng Qingji. No matter how strong Yi Shiwen is, I'm afraid he can't be compared to Feng Qingji. Now we can't do anything. The Emperor's Pavilion is powerful, and they have gone too far. What can we do? Many people were discussing, and their divine thoughts were intertwined. In the field, Feng Qingji looked at Yi Shiwen, and finally, he was a little interested. At this time, Yi Shiwen still had some aura of someone who had just broken through the god's test, and his power was unimaginable. I didn't expect that there is someone in the Duanlong family who has some guts, but guts alone is useless. How dare you be presumptuous in front of me when you just proved your Tao? Feng Qingji said aggressively, but his tone was slow and unhurried, only expressing his complete disdain towards Yi Shiwen. Proved your Tao? Kind of, but it's enough to kill you, Yi Shiwen said faintly, his expression unchanged, and the magic power of his whole body was boiling. On the way from the depths of the Duan Long family's forbidden land, he had already transformed his true vitality into magic power. To some extent, he seemed to be no different from a proved Tao. The only difference was that his life could not be eternal. Transforming true vitality into magic power, the same move in his hands was not the same as before. This was the complete suppression of life level. That was why there was a saying that those below proved Tao were ants and could not be compared at all. He turned his head to look at Broken Dragon Wuyu. He was a little surprised. He did not expect that Broken Dragon Wuyu would actually fail. When Broken Dragon Wuyu advanced to the middle of the immortal level, he also felt it. He thought that with his strength, it would be enough to defeat him. Who would have thought that he would be beaten so miserably? Broken Dragon Wuyu glared at Yi Shiwen, but couldn't say a word. He had indeed lost, and it was a crushing defeat. He had nothing to say, especially in front of Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen didn't say anything. He raised his hand, and a gentle divine power sent Broken Dragon Wuyu out of the arena. You're quite bold. You even dare to interfere in such a battle. If you're alone, I think you'll definitely lose. Didn't you choose someone else? Then come at me together to save time, Feng Qingji said coldly. I think so too. You'd better let your people from the Imperial Weapon Pavilion come at me together. Otherwise, don't say that we changed the rules when you lose. Yi Shiwen pointed out that Feng Qingji had changed the rules. It was supposed to be a best-of-3 system, but now it had become a one-on-one battle for Feng Qingji. However, people had to bow down when they were under someone else's roof. Not to mention that Broken Dragon Wuyu was defeated miserably, so no one thought that there was a problem with this. Foolish and ignorant. It seems that passing the divine tribulation has made you forget everything, Feng Qingji said coldly. I alone am enough to deal with you. You'd better take a good rest. Even if you defeated Broken Dragon Wuyu just now, I'm afraid it was not easy. I won't take advantage of you. Yi Shiwen stood with his hands behind his back. That's all. Feng Qingji opened his mouth and suddenly inhaled. Suddenly, there was a burst of ghostly wails and countless treasures flew into his body at an astonishing speed. Almost instantaneously, most of the primordial qi in his body that had been depleted had been restored. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. What an amazing recovery ability. Wouldn't his endurance in battle be endless? Many people's complexions changed. In many people's opinion, Yi Shiwen was certainly not a match for Feng Qingji. The only thing he could rely on was that he had consumed less vitality than Feng Qingji. However, both sides had almost recovered to the same level. Such strength could be called amazing. There was no doubt that Feng Qingji had an amazing recovery power technique. There were indeed many amazing power techniques in the Tool Emperor Pavilion. What should we do now? Yi Shiwen still had a little advantage. However, this advantage is gone now. This Yi Shiwen is too careless. He has just reached the Dao realm. How can he be compared with Feng Qingji? That's right. He should have launched an attack from the beginning. Now he is too careless? Ling Fei sneered disdainfully as she heard these discussions. She then said, These idiots. The weak will seize the initiative. That's true. But it's hard to say who's the weak. She thought of the heaven's retribution that had happened a few months ago. It had stretched for thousands of miles. It had been an unimaginable deity's retribution. Even those legendary mythical characters hadn't had such dreadful power when they had crossed the deity's retribution. She was young, so she didn't know how spectacular the deity's retribution had been in those days. However, it was enough for her to make some guesses. Wasn't she also a famous genius in the fallen angel race? Her cultivation progress wasn't slower than anyone, even if she wasn't interested in cultivation. So, how could she not guess? Compared with Yi Shiwen, it was hard to say who was the real weakling. Many people were complaining about Yi Shiwen's arrogance. It seemed that his arrogance had led to his failure. Yi Shiwen also heard these discussions. He faintly smiled. Wasn't the human heart like this? They're right. You've given me the opportunity to recover to my peak. This is indeed the biggest mistake you've made in your life. Feng Qingji faintly said, It doesn't matter. You'll fail anyway. It doesn't matter if you're stronger or weaker. Yi Shiwen faintly said, Don't say that I'm bullying you since you've already recovered. I'll use such despicable means to deal with you. Don't cry if you lose. Arrogant, Feng Qingji's complexion slightly changed. He hadn't expected that Yi Shiwen would still be so stubborn at this moment. I'll kill you if that's the case. A sword appeared in his hand. The sword energy of this sword rose horizontally and vertically. It was brimming with formidable power. It surged up and issued an astonishing might under the circulation of his magic power. Whoosh! The sword energy slashed down towards Yi Shiwen. The void trembled violently. It couldn't withstand this dreadful power. The void shattered and formed a black-cut crack, and it directly bombarded towards Yi Shiwen. Just based on this, you're still far from it. A universe emerged from Yi Shiwen's body and expanded in all directions. He was the only true god in this universe. Innumerable magic powers transformed into sword energies and formed sword energy dragons. Tens of thousands of dragons roared and rushed towards the black crack to kill. Rumble! The entire sky trembled violently. Countless amounts of magic power rolled down, as if transparent curtains were hanging down. It was a collision of boundless power. The void collapsed completely, and countless power danced and vented. It continued to expand the area of the collapse, and more power completely poured into the chaos. What a powerful collision! Many people were startled. They had already overestimated Yi Shiwen's strength. However, it was nothing compared to the strength that Yi Shiwen had displayed at this time. In fact, they had almost been scared to death. How can this person be so powerful? Feng Qingji was a little shocked. He thought that Yi Shiwen was at most more powerful than the ordinary early immortal level. At most, he would be comparable to the middle immortal level. Who would have thought that it was far from the case? He was much more powerful than they had imagined. Broken Dragon, Wu stared with his eyes wide open. Yi Shiwen had never displayed this kind of strength before. If he had displayed this kind of fighting strength during the battle a year ago, then perhaps he wouldn't have been able to block even one move and would have suffered a crushing defeat. Even now, it was not something that he could resist. He felt extremely complicated. On one hand, he hoped that Yi Shiwen would win. On the other hand, he did not want Yi Shiwen to win. It was extremely complicated. Feng Qingji felt that his physical body was faintly shaken. It could not be said that he was completely unaffected. However, in the time of a breath, he had almost recovered. He was even more powerful than before. Countless treasures were tempering his physical body. Different from ordinary treasure demons, he was an artifact that had cultivated successfully. He had a physical body, so naturally, he was extremely powerful. It was not as simple as 1 + 1 = 2 to cultivate to the doctrine validation realm with an artifact. Even Yi Mo, if Yi Shiwen had not found him a god shell, might have continued to be an artifact spirit. It did not mean that one could cultivate to the doctrine validation realm with an artifact spirit. It was a completely different concept. Even if one could possess power that far exceeded the doctrine validation realm, when one was an artifact spirit, it did not mean that one could cultivate to the doctrine validation realm. You do have some skills. He grabbed at the void with both hands, and a huge sword immediately appeared. Boundless wind was condensed in an instant. In an instant, the galaxy rolled back and the sky shattered. This was something that could only be done with a high understanding of the wind attribute law. It was possible to use the wind as a sword. Coupled with the speed laws of the wind attribute, this sword was even faster than before. Fast, fast, fast. It was too fast. In an instant, it had already arrived in front of Yi Shiwen. The tip of the sword was less than 3 inches away from the tip of Yi Shiwen's nose. At this moment, Yi Shiwen finally moved. He was as fast as an afterimage. Chapter 2272. At this critical moment, Yi Shiwen's 5 fingers clenched into a fist. The surging fist force swept out and suddenly blasted the long sword condensed from the wind. Dang! In an instant, this long sword that was condensed from wind power was shattered on the spot. Originally, Broken Dragon Wuyu had been forced into a difficult situation. However, in the face of Yi Shiwen, it seemed so powerless. It was completely not Yi Shiwen's opponent. It was shattered in an instant. Be careful! Suddenly, someone exclaimed. Just when Yi Shiwen shattered the wind sword, a long spear penetrated the void and appeared in front of Yi Shiwen. The long spear was accompanied by endless wind attribute laws. It could almost be said that it had reached the level of manifestation. This was Feng Qingji's real trump card. It was obviously a divine tool, and it was an extremely powerful one among the divine tools. Deadly Scholar, is it? I'll let you die knowing. This spear is the wind god's gall. It was once a very powerful divine tool of the wind god in the legends. Now it is in my hands. You will not die in vain if you die here. Feng Qingji's face revealed a somewhat sinister smile. This was his real trump card. Even when he was dealing with Broken Dragon Wuyu, he did not use it. But now he used it all at once. Even he could feel the threat that Yi Shiwen brought to him. Pucci! That prompt didn't seem to be of any use, because when the voice fell, the spear had already pierced through Yi Shiwen's body, completely piercing through his heart. The whole scene looked extremely tragic. The battle had just begun, and Yi Shiwen was pierced by a spear. It seemed that he was in a worse state than Broken Dragon Wuyu just now. In front of Feng Qingji, he could not resist at all. The long spear exuded a truly tyrannical aura. It was an incomparably ancient aura. It had existed longer than many Dao-confirming experts. Feng Qingji's face showed a bright smile. He did not believe that anyone could survive after being pierced by this spear. Not to mention this guy, who had just confirmed his Dao. Even an undead realm expert would die if he pierced his spear. This was the power of a terrifying divine weapon. It made him almost invincible. This was his greatest trump card. No matter how much Broken Dragon Wuyu struggled, it was useless in his eyes. If it wasn't for the fact that he happened to have such a physique, how could he have refined this lethal weapon? Normally, if one was pricked, one would die. How could this be? That Deadly Scholar is really dead meat after being pierced. Oh my God, even if the spear just brushed past my body, I would be dead for sure, let alone piercing into my body. A demigod said in fear. Such a combat power had truly exceeded their imagination. To think that there would be such a ferocious weapon. They could already feel that terrifying aura. Suddenly, just when everyone thought that Yi Shiwen was going to die, they saw that Yi Shiwen's body suddenly issued a ka-ka-ka sound. Numerous cracks appeared on his body, and endless golden light emerged from those cracks. Then, Yi Shiwen completely exploded. "This what's going on?" someone said in shock. "You're quite fast. Is this your trump card? I was almost tricked by you." Yi Shiwen's voice appeared not far away. On his back, a dazzling light flashed. At the critical moment, he unfolded his light wings and dodged this fatal blow. Even Yi Shiwen shuddered a little. If this spear had really pierced his gilded tyrant form, then he would have been seriously injured. It could be said that he was at a disadvantage at the beginning. After going through the baptism of the divine tribulation, although he was stuck at the last moment and failed to succeed, there were many benefits. At the very least, his wings of wind and thunder had evolved into wings of light. It was a completely new level. If it was still at the level of wings of wind and thunder, he would not have been able to avoid it at all. It was just that the wings of demon, which were full of demonic aura at the beginning, had turned into a bright light. Looking at these wings of light, perhaps no one would have thought that this was actually a unique skill of the demon race. This was also the strangest thing to Yi Shiwen. The speed of this wind god's gall was indeed very fast. It completely surpassed space. Otherwise, even if Yi Shiwen did not unfold his wings of light, he would not have been tricked so easily. Feng Qingji's body retreated rapidly. Just at the moment when he retreated, a long sword appeared out of thin air, and then slashed down with the force of a thunderbolt, smashing the place where he was just standing into pieces. How can his speed be so fast? Feng Qingji still looked a little incredulous. He could not believe Yi Shiwen's speed. He had never encountered someone who could match his speed in existence. His eyes were incomparably firm and soon stabilized. However, Yi Shiwen's offensive almost followed him like a shadow. Just now his attack had missed, and he had allowed him to escape. Instead, it had allowed Yi Shiwen to take the initiative and completely occupy the upper hand. Animal Dao. Yi Shiwen clenched his 5 fingers into a fist and punched out. It turned into countless ferocious mythological beasts and ominous beasts. A mighty army chased after Feng Qingji. What kind of fist technique is this? Feng Qingji was shocked by Yi Shiwen again. This fist technique was undoubtedly extremely powerful. It could be said that he had never seen such a powerful fist technique in his life. Yi Shiwen, who had almost proven his Dao, had a higher cultivation and understanding of the 6 paths of reincarnation fist. He had almost exerted the limits of his realm, so he could feel the unparalleled power of the 6 paths of reincarnation fist. Although this fist technique is powerful, it is still far from being able to kill me. Feng Qingji let out a long roar. The wind god's gall in his hand danced, and instantly formed an incomparably huge tornado. It spun rapidly, almost forming a roaring wind dragon, and rushed towards these ominous beasts and mythological beasts. Bang! 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 Wherever the wind god's gall passed, the ominous beasts and mythological beasts were completely crushed by him. They could not pose any threat to his wind god's gall at all. In addition to the characteristic of speed, the wind attribute law also had another characteristic, which was sharpness. When the speed reached a certain level, this sharpness could even cut through space and time. It could be said to be an incomparably terrifying kind of law. Boom! Yi Shiwen's fist and the wind god's gall collided and issued a loud explosive sound. It set off a boundless energy frenzy and rolled in all directions. Feng Qingji only felt a terrifying force coming towards him, and the wind god's gall in his hand was about to be shaken off. He quickly put away the long spear and gathered his strength for another attack. It was like a violent storm, and a wind dragon formed in the sky, sweeping and wreaking havoc. Countless stones on the ground were swept away, and the huge stones flew up one by one. This was because they were attracted by the wind attribute law. Boom! Countless attacks were like a violent torrent, and they bombarded towards Yi Shiwen. Fast! 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 It was so fast that the crowd could not see clearly at all. One sword to break all laws. Yi Shiwen's sword blasted into this boundless torrent of spear Dao. The sword light burst out, and in an instant, this torrent was completely broken. Bang! 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 In an instant, they had already exchanged 1,000 blows, 10,000 blows. Everyone's eyes were blurred, and they could not see the movements of the two clearly. Both of them were using speed to fight speed. Feng Qingji's control and understanding of the wind attribute law had reached an unimaginable level for ordinary people, and Yi Shiwen was not the slightest bit inferior. Although he did not unfold his light wings, his speed was not slow at all. In fact, he was even faster. Although the crowd could not see the movements of the two clearly, overall, it was Feng Qingji who was retreating step by step. This could still be seen, and he was completely suppressed by Yi Shiwen. Whoosh! Feng Qingji suddenly flew out and broke away from the battle. His entire person flew into the air. Behind him, an entire world was formed. The entire world's towering mountains, surging rivers, and vast and boundless seas were all clearly visible. This was a world that he had condensed with the power of the wind attribute. It actually had the embryonic form of a world, and an invisible world pressure spread out. Feng Qingji let out a long roar and opened his mouth wide. The treasured aura within a radius of hundreds of miles formed a long dragon and was sucked into his mouth. Everything on the map became clearer and more lifelike. This world was all the essence of his power. He displayed his strongest means and slowly crushed down. No one knew what kind of world this was, but he had borrowed power from it. This was the power of a world, and it completely crushed down. It was a powerful force that ordinary people could not resist at all. Deadly Scholar, this is the power of the world that I borrowed from the gall of the wind god. I have never used it before, so I'll use you to practice. You're dead for forcing me to this point. Now that things have come to this, I have to say that until now, your performance has been very good, but this is as far as it goes. In front of me, you are still not qualified. Feng Qingji laughed loudly. In an instant, the entire world of wind came pressing down. Everyone felt as if two worlds had collided, and all the laws were in chaos. The laws of the two worlds collided, twisted, and broke. The surrounding demigods almost felt that all the laws that they had condensed were being suppressed, and even in danger of breaking. The collision of two worlds was as terrifying as Mars colliding with Earth. A single mistake could even destroy the two worlds. Although the world that Feng Qingji had summoned was not real, and was merely a projection of the world, it was already terrifying enough, and it made everyone feel as if the whole world was collapsing. It came pressing down on Yi Shiwen at lightning speed. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.